We're into Unit 4 now, which is service information and repair orders. And overall, I would say like this is an overview of how the diagnostic process is and how repairs go and what it's like to be a professional technician, which is drastically different than working on your own car. So jumping right in, if you're, let's say you're going to work on a vehicle in the dealership or in an independent shop, every repair is always going to be documented and available in vehicle service history. So if something comes in, let's say you find a vehicle comes in with a leaking drain plug and you want to know who worked on it last. This is the way that you can find that out. You could look in service history and you'll be able to get a list like this of who worked on it, when they worked on it, and what they did, right? So you could skim the repair history and find out, hey, who did this oil change? Or let's say they over tighten an oil filter, like an oil filter housing severely, and you can't get it off, and you got to get a breaker bar, and you're banging on it with the hammer, and you're really mad. You can go over to them and talk with them nicely and say, hey, let me show you something. Come over here. You're the last one to do this oil change. Look at how over torqued this oil filter housing is. That's how we would use it. How management may use it would be slightly different. So if somebody's going to get in trouble for over torquing that oil filter housing, that's how they're going to look it up and know you did it. Okay, so this is a bit different than like a fast food job where you flip the burgers or whatever, and then somebody else flips the burgers, and then someone comes back saying, hey, the burger was messed up, but you're not exactly sure who did it. When you work on the car, your technician number and name will be recorded to that car. All right. So you will be accountable, which is part of the reason that we're going to press quality so hard. All right. So service history, any questions on that? It's pretty simple. Which also, by the way, shows miles too. So it's the date and the miles. So you can tell, like, if a wheel, let's just say that like lug nuts are stripped and then it comes back and they're like, hey, you worked on it last. And you may look at it and be like, oh, that was like 9 months ago and 12,000 miles ago. They've probably had their tires rotated since then. Give you a little bit of a clue. Maybe someone else has worked on it. Okay. So it gives you as much information as possible. The next thing, there's this thing called technical service bulletins. And this is something that's within service information, something that we're going to pull off of presentation and actually show you on TIS. But you're going to do this assignment that has you looking up specifications and whatnot. And technical service bulletins essentially is like the manufacturer puts this out. They know there's an issue. They're aware of it. There's hopefully a fix. Most of the time there's a fix. And there's on here, there's going to be some ranges like year, make, model, but also they'll give you production date ranges. So when we look at a vehicle production date, that's typically in the door jamb. That's one of the ways that we can tell, it's saying the beginning of manufacture is September 2014 and the ending date is October 2014. So only between September and October of 2014, there was some sort of a defect. Like in this case, it was fuel pressure sensor may not have been seated properly in the fuel jumper line, right? So it's just a made up TSB. But if there's a service bulletin that applies to that vehicle, you may have to pull production dates. Sometimes it starts with a VIN and it goes all the way through a VIN, right? So you guys should know the first part of the VIN based on your assignment is it all means different things. And then the second part of it is just sequential, right? Number one, number two, number three. So if they find out number three was defective and it went all the way to 9,257, only those numbers in the VIN range would be affected. So just to give you some perspective on it. And then it'll give you some information. And then if a little bit later, let's really look at a TSB when we're in TIS. They'll give you like if it's an updated part or if there's a procedure to repair this defect. So like this one, for example, the fuel pressure regulator or the fuel pressure sensor causing a leak. I didn't actually get to see all of what the fix was, but we'll make it up. maybe there's a procedure to unbolt the fuel pressure sensor and install a new O-ring, put a specific type of grease on the O-ring, seat the O-ring, torque the O-ring screws or bolts to spec, right? And it's going to give you a step-by-step procedure. Mr. Clyde, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Just going back a little bit, Andrew had a good question in the chat. What if the owner does not record the service history, or perhaps the mechanic does not record? So at the dealer, when a vehicle comes in for service, it gets put into the system by the service advisor, and then when the technician works on it, they fill out. You can call it paperwork, but it's mostly electronic in many cases now, and it includes the vehicle identification number, the mileage, the date, what work was done. So when that data goes upstairs at the dealer to the warranty and work uh, personnel who put all that stuff into the Toyota system to close it out, for you to get paid and for the dealer to get paid back from Toyota for any warranty. That's how it gets into the service history. So it doesn't matter if the customer never writes it down in their owner's manual that they took it in for service. The technician has to complete something on paper or electronically for the work they did, in order to be tracked for getting paid. Even if they're hourly, you're still being tracked on what you're doing so they can keep track of your efficiency. So it will be there. So you don't have to worry about it not being there.
That was a good question. And so you guys know if you have a question like that that's relating to exactly what we're talking about, permission to go ahead and unmute and go ahead and ask that one. So I think I was understanding Anna's question a little bit differently. So Anna, what about this? Are you saying if you do your own oil change, are you wondering if that's recorded somewhere? Because the
Ye-
answer would be no.
Yeah, so what I was referring to was both of those. In a case where like maybe the service history gets lost or something, however, Mr. Clyde just addressed that most likely wouldn't happen. But
Yeah.
also like you said right now, what if like they take it to an independent shop or their own mobile mechanic and they don't put that in the system anywhere, and then the car gets brought into the dealer and now you have no clue who, over tightened that oil filter or nothing like that, right?
Yeah, I'll good point, and I'm happy to spend some more time on this. So I'll give you rather than tell you the facts like a bullet point, I'll just tell you a story. I think you'll understand it perfectly. So my sister-in-law, not she married a guy, white collar dude, non-mechanically inclined at all in any way. And neither one of them are actually. So they're like your typical consumer. They don't own any tools. They just don't do anything like this. And so they asked for my advice. Hey, we want to buy a car. And they're young. Okay. So if they were in a different position, my answer would have been different. Okay. But they said, hey, we want to buy a car. And they were looking at used cars because I think they were looking to spend, it was low, like 12 grand. They're like, we can spend 12. They're looking at used, all sorts of stuff. A $12,000 Toyota was going to be like probably like 6, 7 years old, 60, 70,000 miles. Not a bad deal. But I said, why don't you consider buying a brand new Kia? Okay, so you can go ahead and laugh if you want, because he could buy a Kia Soul for like 12.5. So I said, come up with the 500 bucks. You don't have to go and have it checked out and make sure it's a good car, whatever. You will be buying it brand new, essentially 0 miles minus the PDI miles. And the really cool thing is when you buy that vehicle, you get a 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty. So if anything happens to that engine or transmission or whatever, you're good for 10 years or 100,000 miles, whichever comes first, which was the leading in the industry, right? So I felt like it was a really good recommendation. Now, if he said he could come up with 18 grand, I would have said go buy a Camry or, or something like he didn't have enough for a RAV4, but so he bought the Kia, and you guys are giggling and I'm fine with that. And it was pretty good, but he asked, "Hey, who do I have do the maintenance on this?" And my recommendation was I would bring it right back to the dealership. And I didn't really take the time to explain all this to him. I just said, "Yeah, bring it to the dealer." And after like about 3 oil changes, they're like, you know what? The dealer's like kind of far, and there's a local guy around the corner with like just a oil change shop. real convenient. He's not really any cheaper though. You know, maybe just minimally cheaper. Like if you're saving $5 or something, I would say that that's not cheaper. That's basically the same, right? So they bring it to this guy. This guy does oil change, oil change, oil change, oil change, and then right around like 90,000 miles, he's driving this car and boom, it just stops running. So they call him, they're like, "Hey, this Kia Soul just we were driving and it just boom, it just conked out and died. What do we do?" And I'm like, "Psh, good for you that that thing's still under warranty with 90,000 miles, you know. Tow it into the dealership and the dealership will fix it." And I'm thinking everything is cool. Well, they tow it to the dealer, they do a diagnosis. First, he's a little thrown off because he has to sign for a 1 hour diagnostic charge and he's like, "Well, it's under warranty." And the side point of that is, well, you think it's under warranty, but we got to confirm it. And if the technician spends time diagnosing why the engine died, they're going to want to get paid, right? So somebody's liable. If they determine it's not warranty, the technician is going to get paid out of that 1 hour diagnostic charge. So he kind of gripes about it. And I tell him, dude, just sign it. You know, if everything is good, they're not going to charge you. Well, sure enough, they call him back the next day. "Hey, your timing belt's broken." And he's like, "Great, fix it. It's under warranty." And they said, "Well, actually, that's maintenance. Did you have it done?" And he's like, "I don't even know what a timing belt is." Right. And so they say, "Well, check with your mechanic and see, you know, where'd you have all the work done? We look in your service history. You did like 3 oil changes back when you bought it brand new. Then we didn't see the car for like 4 years. And now it's got 90,000 miles and it's broken." Okay. So you can kind of predict where this is going. So the Kia dealer looked in the history and it was just blank. He gets a hold of the lube guy, you know, the oil change place. I don't think it was Valvoline or Jiffy Lube. I think it was like just a, you know, a one-off independent type of place. And he says, "Hey, did you do my timing belt?" And he's like, "No, I never charged you to do your timing belt." And then he says, well, the timing belt broke. You know, you're liable for this." And the independent oil change place is like, "No, no, no, I'm not liable. I didn't. If I did the timing belt and it broke, yes, but I never touched that timing belt. I'm not liable for any of that type of stuff." So he told the dealer, you know, "This guy, I did not do the timing belt. I didn't know I was supposed to do the timing belt. Why didn't someone tell me I was supposed to do the timing belt? Because now you got a car that's trash." And, you know, the dealer's saying like, "We'll give you $500 on trade on it, and then we'll sell you another one." And he's kind of freaking out because he still has to make payments on this car that's now worth $500. And so the dealer did some educating of this guy, said, "Hey, you know, if you were to bring it here for all your maintenance, we would have absolutely told you that you needed a timing belt." The independent shop guy was like, "I didn't even know it needed a timing belt," right? So there was a big lesson there. In If you want to do the work on your own, if you want to have the mobile mechanic do it, if you want to do all that, there can be some convenience, but make sure you weigh it against that's not documented in the system, especially when you bought the car brand new, or even if you bought it used. If it has a warranty, I would be absolutely letting the people who are going to honor your warranty do your maintenance, because when it hits the fan, you know what I'm saying? They're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, you're our customer. We've seen you." And I more recently, this was a so he was just out. He just basically that car was trash. So that was a really tough lesson. And I just said, "Dude, like you save $5 and 15 minutes of driving to take it to this local dude rather than the dealership. Like that was stupid, man." And so my answer is the same to you. I would bring it to the dealership and let him do all the maintenance, have it documented. Now, if he were to come in and say like, "Here's my maintenance receipt for the timing belt," then probably, and Kia and Toyota are a little different, right? But this is the idea. They probably would have said, "Well, who manufactured the timing belt?" And he'd have been like, "Amazon. I got it off Amazon." And they would have said, "Well, that timing belt broke. That's Amazon's problem, not Kia's problem," right? So it just gets ugly if you're trying to keep it under warranty and you're trying to have other people pick away at it. I wouldn't even go down that path. Then the other interesting one that I just had that was only 2 months ago was a friend of a friend bought a Subaru and she drove the wheels off it. I mean, it had like 130,000 miles. It was only like 5 years old though. So they were like, "Oh yeah, it's still under warranty. It's like 4 or 5 years old." And then I'm like, "Well, let me check it out because it's losing power and misfiring." And so she brings it into the Subaru dealership, but she had done the maintenance at Subaru. Not all of it though. One oil change at Subaru, one at Jiffy Lube, one at Valvoline, one at Subaru. She did the brakes at Subaru. She did some other work someplace else, right? But they at least were keeping some tabs. And when she brought it in, it was way out of warranty, like almost double. Like it had over 100,000, I think, on it, and their warranty expires at 60. And it was low compression on a couple of the cylinders. So they said, hey, you need an engine. You need an engine and a whole new engine and a few other things. And the estimate was $17,000. And she like nearly had a heart attack. It was like 17, what? 17,000. I can't fit 17 grand. Forget it. I'm not going to fix it. They asked me and I said, well, the thing I would request is the goodwill warranty. So goodwill warranty is where you're out of warranty, but Subaru or Toyota or Kia or somebody can potentially give you a goodwill warranty where they're going to cover it even though you're not. And she asked at first and they're like, well, that's not, you're way out of warranty. We don't have authorization to do that. You can call the 1-800 number. And she called the 1-800 Subaru number, and talked with a rep and said, I bought the car brand new. I had the dealer do the maintenance, and I'm just really surprised. I did all the maintenance they ever asked, and now the engine's bad. And, we still owe a bunch of money on this car, and it's a $17,000 estimate. Well, Subaru ended up covering $10,000 of that job. And then she negotiated a little bit with the dealer. And I think she got out of that whole thing for about 4,500 bucks. And so doing at least some of the maintenance and work at the dealership can pull a lot of weight. So I would steer everybody to do that. Additionally, and recalls are coming up right here. So I can, well, I'll throw a recall in right here. If you're bringing your car to the independent shop or to the mobile mechanic or DIY or whatever, nobody's running that VIN number for recalls. So if you're bringing it to the dealership and there's a new recall, every time the car rolls through the service drive, the service advisor goes out. They write the VIN down. They pull it up in dealer daily or service lane, and anything that applies to that vehicle as far as a recall or like a campaign is going to pop up, and they're going to say, hey, while you're here, would you like to take care of this recall? You don't have to wait to get it in the mail, especially when you buy a car used. A lot of times that recall notice may go to the original owner, and so people may be driving around with some safety related issue, and not even knowing about it, right? So this is all really positive reasons to stick with the dealership, because they're going to record all this stuff. They have access to this. Let's say you bring it to the dealership and they find that your oil pan is leaking. Well, Jiffy Lube, Valvoline, no offense, you guys, I'm just going to keep picking on them, but I'm not picking on you. I'm picking on them. You know what I'm saying? Not us, it's them, those people at the Jiffy Lube and the Valvolines. But if they see that oil pan leaking, good chance they're just gonna be like, I don't know, we don't do oil pans here, and they're just gonna let it roll. Whereas if you bring it to the dealership and there's a leak, if it's a very minor seep, they're not gonna worry about it. But if it's a leak that will potentially leak enough oil to damage the engine, they'll actually add a line on the repair order, talk with you, the customer, talk with your family member, whoever the customer is, and just say, hey, you came in for an oil change. We noticed you have an oil pan leak. How about we take care of that for you? And, the customer would say, what's it going to cost me? And they'd say, well, it's under warranty. We're just going to fix it for you, right? So all these positive reasons for why the dealership model is successful. The negative being, yeah, they got a higher labor rate. They got a nicer facility. They a lot of times pay more. They they you know it's a little more high class, right? So it's going to cost a little bit more than the mobile mechanic who rolls up with the Harbor Freight jack and the recalled Harbor Freight jack stands and tries to bust it out in your driveway and spills it into the sidewalk. That's a person who's going to work for a little less, right? So regarding that, does that answer your question about the documentation?
Yeah, that was a very thorough answer. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sure.
And then to add quickly, if like Mr. Kelly and I did, we pretty much do our own maintenance. But not every new vehicle comes with a paper owner's manual, although most still come with a maintenance guide that's still paper in the glove box. But at a minimum, you can go online and print those out at usually the corporate website. But if like for the car I've had the longest that I use that maintenance guide is my Shelby Mustang. And every time I go to a certain mileage, it lists what's supposed to be done at that mileage. So when you write in the date and what services were done, that's another way to keep track of that. If if it's under warranty and you're doing that, I would also keep the receipts. So what oil did you buy? You might even take a picture of what you bought and maybe a picture of it being done if you're doing it at home. Just so, yeah, that would be the book. So, if you as technicians and you buy a new car and you want to do the work yourself and you're doing it at home to keep yourself, yeah, that's it. There'll be a spot in there, and Mr. Kelly is going to find it. A spot in there to write down your work, and while you're under warranty, you'll want to keep your receipts and any proof you can that you did the work. So should something happen, then you're covered. So see, it tells you what you're supposed to do. So in theory, at the dealer, you should be checking this off for a customer if this is in their glove box. So so telling you as students that are going to be doing this at work on Toyotas or Lexus vehicles, if this book is in the glove box, then for that particular mileage, fill this out for the customer and leave it on the center console or on the passenger seat with a note and saying, I filled this out for you. Thank you for coming in to have your vehicle serviced at Anaheim Toyota or wherever you're working. And that, I tell you what, if you want a customer to come back, fill this out and leave a little note in it and sign it, and I guarantee you that you're going to increase the chances of them coming back to get work done at your store by 100%. Okay, so
Yeah, they like this. The only thing I've heard is some customers don't want you going through their glove compartment.
yeah,
So I'd love that. I think it's an amazing idea. I think I would just make sure you check with the manager and just say, hey, do I have, like, for example, the wheel lock that's in the glove compartment? A lot of dealers don't want you even looking for that, so they have the master set. So anybody who's working can you guys say if your dealer will have you go in the glove box, or if your dealer says don't even touch any personal stuff? Anybody got any feedback? Now's a good time.
and if your dealer does say that, you can always ask if you have a particular service advisor that does most of the maintenance write-ups, you can let them know on the days you're working, hey, remember I'm working today, so can you try to find the maintenance booklet out of the glove box with the customer so I can fill it out for them? And let them know why you're doing it and that's going to increase the chances of them coming back for service, which is money in their pocket too.
Yeah, at Toyota downtown LA, the service advisor they asked the customer to to leave the lock right there, like in the cup holder, somewhere visible for us
I see. So
to
you could
use.
say, if you want me
But
to
yeah,
fill this out, leave the owner's manual too.
yeah, they could do that too. Because at our dealership, they're having us check all the spare tires as well. So the advisors are supposed to be asking for permission on that. Um, But yeah, for the most part, we all have a master set.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I have a aftermarket set too, but they don't really want us to use that so much just because
Yeah,
aftermarket
understandable.
could be issues, or some lug nuts have all locks and it takes more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well understood. So you guys right now, I think is actually a pretty good moment to take a look at this. This is something that I pulled from TIS. It's could be a little bit hard to find. Sometimes it's under reference information. Sometimes it's under owner's manual. It could be its own standalone maintenance manual. Especially sometimes if it's a special, like let's say it's the GR model, they might even have a supplemental book because the GR Corolla has different maintenance intervals than the regular Corolla. But ultimately, part of the point of today is like how we do business professionally, right? Service information, we don't make stuff up. So if someone says, hey, you're a mechanic, well, how often should I change my oil? Your answer shouldn't really be your opinion. Like your opinions are amazing and you could probably mostly keep them to yourself because nobody cares. However, what we have to reference is this manual, right? So this was for an older one. This is a 2010 Camry. If let's say I've skimmed to the bottom, I couldn't tell if this was a V6. I think this for the V6. It can be different if it's a 4-cylinder or a six, right? At 5,000 miles or 6 months. So this is the first service. Check installation of driver's floor mat. Anybody know anything about that? There's a reason that's in there. Y'all heard anything about floor mats? Maybe
The
cost
So it
lawsuit.
doesn't get stuck on the gas pedal?
Yeah, that's what it is. So back in the day, the unintended acceleration caused a whole bunch of things. It's part of the reason why certification's so important now and et cetera. But, this is not something that a regular shop would check, but at the Toyota dealer, that's the very first thing you check. Check the installation of the floor mat. If there's multiple floor mats stacked on top of each other, take it out. We leave a little note, don't do this, et cetera. Right. So that's the first thing. Inspect and adjust all fluid levels. Interesting. So what fluids do you think are in that list? Oil, right? But we're doing oil change. What else?
Brake fluid, washer
Coolant.
fluid,
Yeah.
coolant,
Yeah.
um, clutch fluid if it has it.
Oh, damn.
If it's a manual, yeah.
Yeah.
What about
Coolant.
Steering.
Steering fluid, power steering fluid.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
It could also be transmission fluid as well.
Could be. What if it was a 4-wheel drive?
Differential fluid.
Yeah,
For
they
real.
could have front
Transfer
front
case?
differential, rear differential, transfer. There's a whole bunch of fluids. And so this could be a basic check, or this could be like whoa, this is going to take me some time, right? And so, some technicians, the plan here is like, I don't have time to check all that. Well, then you're not really following the maintenance guide published by Toyota, right? And so sometimes you have to look at what Toyota wants and you may have to weigh that against what your dealership business model is. And so like Tustin Toyota, for example, will do 250 cars on a Saturday, sometimes 300, sometimes even 325 cars on a Saturday. And they've got, if you show up there, there may be like a 2-hour wait. So if there's a 2-hour wait, you're probably going to get some pressure to be like, look, we don't need to check every single detail. Just try to get the cars out. Right. And so I'm not necessarily going to take sides on this, but my job is to profess to you the truth. And so this is what you're supposed to do. According to Toyota, this is what the expectation is. The manufacturer made the car. This is what they recommend. Cool. Now, if we look at the dealership model, sometimes the dealer focuses a lot on volume. I mean, ultimately, the dealer's concerned about getting negative reviews. Ultimately, the dealer's concerned about people returning for business. And so if you can do that really high quality within a short amount of time, that's the win-win. Sometimes when it gets really busy and there's a 2-hour wait list, a wait time, the customers that are going to write the Yelp and Google reviews 1 star saying that they waited 3 hours for an oil change, that hurts. That hurts, and the dealer's going to kind of say like, hey, I love that you want to do every single little step, but like we got to speed it up somehow. And that's as much as I'll say. I don't feel like I have the qualifications to tell them how to run their business. There's also several different reasons why I wouldn't be in that position. It kind of makes you compromise, but just know this is what should be done. But ultimately, if your employer tells you don't do it, you gotta at least make a decision there, and you should probably consider the fact of those are the people that sign the paycheck. All right, so all the fluids could mean a lot of things. Replace the engine oil and filter. And there's a little asterisk. We'll come up to that. Rotate the tires. Visually inspect brake linings, drums, disc brakes, disc pads, and discs. All right, so that's pretty simple. Then it says additional Inspect ball joints and dust covers. Those are really boots. Inspect the drive shaft boots. Inspect the engine air filter. Inspect the steering linkage and boots. Tighten nuts and bolts on the chassis and body. And if you're towing, tighten nuts and bolts on chassis and body. So it's kind of like a little bit repetitive. The reason they bring up tighten nuts and bolts on the chassis is because hidden bumps and over time, and even if you're towing or the car's being towed, sometimes the road just tends to rattle stuff loose. So they're just basically saying check for loose bolts. Anybody ever seen a technician at 5,000 miles run around and checking for loose stuff? Probably not real common, but again, this is what's in there. And I would also say, if you guys are doing the work and everything's turned out fine and nobody's upset with you, then great. Kind of like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if, Toyota comes by, you need to know the steps you're supposed to be doing. And also you need to know really what the actual expectation is on you. These are the expectations placed by Toyota corporate, which keep in mind that is not your employer. Your employer is the auto group or the dealership, right? And then I wanted to make a note on this. Inspect the engine air filter. So all this, like at 5,000 miles, you think the air filter's dirty? Anybody ever seen an air filter dirty at 5,000?
No.
No, but look, it does say special operating conditions with it too. So let's see what that is. And I could dig it out. I know I think it was at the top. It's either the top or the bottom, but a lot of times the asterisk is like dirt roads or severe service. So if you're doing dirt roads and stuff, actually, I don't know, maybe that air filter would be dirty. But for the normal, typical Orange County person, LA person, like, you're probably not going to find a dirty air filter at 5,000. However, what if a rodent made a nest in there? And that rodent's nest ends up chewing through the air filter, and it ends up damaging the mass airflow sensor. And they say, hey, well, I just had the oil changed a week ago. The technician didn't notice this, and you'd be like, well, it's only 5,000 miles. I didn't check it. It's 5,000 miles. Well, so be careful about being complacent in predicting, right? Because if you're working on your own car, you only work on one car. But if you're working for the dealership, you're working on 10, 12 cars a day, sometimes more. These 1% chances means 1 in 100 cars can have it, and you'll work on 100 cars in the next 2 weeks. So you got to be aware. You might really want to cross those T's and dot those I's and make sure we do all these steps, because if anybody comes asking, I'm not going to lie to them. And if I say, yes, I was supposed to check that, but no, I didn't, I'm kind of messing up, right? Cool. Now, if they say, why didn't you check it? And your answer was, well, the shop foreman said we had too many cars and to hurry it up. And I asked him, I'll work as fast as I can, but if you want it done faster than as fast as I can do it, what do you want me to do? And they say, well, just stop checking the air filter at 5,000 miles. Then you'd be like, hey, I'm an employee. The foreman told me not to check the air filters unless it's 15,000. Then it's kind of on them. So sometimes that stuff happens in the dealership. Like to say it doesn't, right? But let's just skip forward to like a more of a major service, like 30,000 miles. They're saying to same things, but replace the engine air filter. Right. So it's almost the same. Then it also specifies inspect the coolant, right? Inspect a lot of connections and things. Oh, there you go. If you're driving on dirt roads or dusty roads, if you're driving and towing, it actually calls to replace the front differential oil on the Camry. Right? So depending on what conditions you're in, let's say we jump down to about 60K. At 60, looks pretty much the same as 30. Let's say that we jump down to 90,000. Oh, looks pretty similar to 30. And I'm a little surprised because usually they're calling for that coolant here pretty soon, maybe at 100. 100,000 miles. Oh, look at that. Replace the engine coolant at 100. Okay, so like I was saying about your opinions, you are just very special. You are one of a kind. But if a customer says, hey, when should I replace my coolant? My answer would be, well, I'm going to look it up in service information. I'm going to see when the manufacturer recommends it. Make sense? So as technicians, we mostly execute what the manufacturer recommendation is. If they ask how tight a bolt is, if they ask when some should be done, right? That's not really our role. Our role is to be able to source this information. So you're going to notice over the course of the next month, we're going to be referencing information, referencing it, not thinking about it and making it up so much, but reference the information. In this case, it calls for coolant at 100,000 miles or 120 months. That's when the coolant gets done. Now, you did notice, though, up here, it was saying to inspect the coolant. Now, if we perform an inspection on the coolant, freeze protection, pH, and there's a defect with the coolant, then we can do it early, but we don't do it early because the coolant's on sale. We don't do it early because we wanted to make extra money. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be a standard. And the standard is if there's a defect, by all means, but you need to say what you did to determine the defect. Or the manufacturer recommends it at X, Y, and Z miles and months. Great. Perfect. Okay. So you could look through a lot of this. Like a lot of times spark plugs are around 120 or so. Or sometimes around 100. Yeah, there you go. Spark plugs at 120. So those iridium spark plugs, they last a long time. It's not like back in the day, you'd bring the car in every year or two, they'd be like, oh, it's time for a tune-up. You need new spark plugs. If you take it to an independent shop and the car's 3 years old and 36,000 miles and they're telling you need spark plugs, I'd be like, hold up. On a new car, I don't think so. See what I'm saying? So they call for replacing the spark plugs. And as a side note, if you dig further into service info, anybody ever heard of gapping spark plugs? Yeah, you won't find information on how to gap these because they're iridium coated. And if you try to slide the gapping tool in, a lot of times it'll scrape the thin layer of iridium out. So we don't pull the spark plugs at 30 and clean them up and re-gap them and stuff. Like that's old school. And those were cool days, but you got to be current as the current model year, as current as whatever year the car you're working on is. Make sense? So that was a good, just quick overview of the maintenance manual. Again, you can find this on service info or probably as part of one of the next things we cover is the MPI. So the MPI should a lot of times have that stuff built in. Okay. And then the last little note on service info specifically was just going to be this label. So when we go to look up service info, we need to pull like you could go by the VIN, right? But if you want to know what year it is and we were to look at this, if we were to look at this really carefully, I could look the test group, it's saying what it is. It says what emissions component it has. By the way, this is something for your assignment. Okay, check this out. It has sequential fuel injection, 2 air fuel ratio sensors, 2-way, 3-way catalysts, 2 heated O2 sensor, that's the downstream, a 3-way catalyst. It's a warm-up 3-way catalyst and a regular catalyst. It's a 3.3 liter. So this has a whole bunch of info. And it even says engine tune-up specs, valve clearance, intake and exhaust. No other adjustments are needed. It conforms to US EPA regulations applicable to gasoline-fueled 2005 model year, tier 2, bin 5. So wait a minute. What year is this?
Oh, 05?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the production date is. It's a 2005 model year. Now, assuming this isn't on the hood and somebody didn't change the hood. Okay, so that's a legit concern. This is an old one, but this formatting hasn't really changed. So if you want to know what model year it is, you pop the hood, you can look in this VECI label, then you know what model year it is. If you want to know the production date, you got to open the door and you can look for the production date in the door. And then additionally, if you want to know what engine it is, This is telling you it's the 3.3 liter, but if you want to speak Toyota lingo, we would usually call it this. So if you're like, hey, what engine is that? And you'd said the 3MZ, everybody be knowing what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying? Toyota uses these engine codes. So that was a good example of the VECI label. Now I'll preview this. We're going to get into strategy-based diagnosis. But I think before we do, I think it's a perfect time to bust out that service info that you guys haven't really seen that much of yet. So if we want to go into service info, and I could even show you a little bit of all data, if you guys want. I believe I have that. Let me see if I can jump in there. All data tends to be a little bit more basic. So I will show you the only real justification for all that is like a lot of the dealerships, they'll sell used cars and then will a lot of times do the maintenance and even repairs on used cars. All right, so let's do a basic overview. Somebody pick a non-Toyota, something within 10-year-old car. Call it out.
Chevy Camaro.
2016. Oh, go.
A Kia Sonata or something like that.
Okay, so a Hyundai.
Oh,
Somebody
Hyundai
was calling
Sonata.
for it. We could do that, but what year?
Somebody traded in 2017.
Okay, there we go. 2017, right? So all data is all makes models. It's doesn't always have all the info that we need, but it's something. So let's look up Hyundai right here, Sonata. Now we need to know, is it a 1.6 turbo? Is it a 2-liter hybrid? Is it a 2-liter plug-in hybrid? Is it a 2-liter turbo? Is it a 2.4 liter? Do you guys remember the VECI label? You might have to go out to the car and you could decode the VIN, or you could put in you could look at the VECI label and then answer it based on that. Right, and all data does have a pretty cool thing where we can actually put the VIN in right there. But for now, let's go with, I don't know, let's say it's the 1.6 turbo. And let's say we're trying to do an oil change. I'm just going to even search oil change. And that should probably come up with something. I did not mean to put it in reading mode. I have no idea how to get that gone. So let's go like this. Oil change. See what we get here. Okay, gear oil? Nah. Turbocharger? Nah. Compressor? Nah. Parts and labor maintenance? Yeah, maybe we can click that. Sometimes you get, oh, here's that service interval. See, it's not really as nice and clean as the owner's manual, but it's saying at 7,500 miles, ooh, with the 2-liter turbo, change the oil at 3,000 and then every 4,800 miles thereafter. That's a pain in the butt number. Or depends on what engine it is. So that's going to be kind of ugly, right? But there's your overall oil change interval. That's not how to do an oil change. So probably the way we're going to have to look at this is going to be a little different, right? And you could dig around. How do I get rid of this? It's a pain in my butt.
There's like a little X right above the pin.
Oh, you know, the problem is, well, my second screen, it makes it just a little too big. So I gotta make it smaller than I can see it. There it is. Yeah, that was really easy, except I could not see that. Okay. So fail right there. How about maintenance? Now it's showing you the maintenance, alignment, drive belt, filters, fluids. Maybe we'll consider fluids. And I'm going to say probably fluids. Cool. Engine oil. There we go. Here we go. You could do parts and labor, and it's going to tell you what it pays, which is going to be not much. You could do procedures, which is actually going to walk you through it. All right. So your first lesson is when you go to do a job, if you don't know how to do a job and you're a DIY person, you jump on YouTube or you ask grandpa or whatever. If you're a professional technician, you should have access to a paid subscription. right? You don't have all data. I have all data. You can have it at the school because the school has a subscription. But it only works while you're at the school because it's based on IP address. So this is actually an account that I can use from home, but it's only for me, not for you. All right. So when you go to do a job, you can be like, hey, look at this. I got some information. Like, for example, prolonged contact with engine oil will give you cancer and you'll die. All right. But then we get into more important. Here's how you drain the oil. Remove the filler cap, remove the drain plug, drain the oil into a container, remove the oil filter with a special service tool 92-623 and blah, 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 the wrench. Okay, so that's the cup filter. One thing right off the bat, initial impressions, if you go to do this job and you're like, hi, I can't change your oil because I don't have SST 09263-2E000, like you don't want to get in the habit of saying you can't, right? Do you have a universal oil filter cup or an oil filter strap wrench or any way you can do the job? Because if you do, that's what you should do. You should get it done. You can't get it done and mess it up. But if you can use a universal tool, like I have some random oil filter stuff over here, we'll be doing oil changes later, but right, per the service information, it's saying you need this special tool. So that can be a bit of a pain, right? Make sure it's clean, check the part number, make sure it's the same. Apply clean engine oil to the gasket, lightly screw the oil filter into place, tighten until the gasket makes a contact seat, tighten with the torque below. 8.7 to 11.6 foot-pounds. Right, so that's the matter of fact. Now, if you've done 1,000 oil changes and you're just like, you know what, I just do hand tight, cool. But your hand tight is different than my hand tight, is different than anybody's hand tight. So when we follow the service information, we're doing it to a standard, right? That gives us the standard, and then we deliver to the standard. Cool. So let's just say you get hauled off into court someday and they're like, Hugo, on or about June 16th at 1:03 p.m. Did you perform this oil change? And you're like, yes. What did you torque the oil filter to? And you're like, I just, I tightened it as much as I could. I tightened it tights tight and two tights broke. Guden tight, German torque specs. What you want? Ugadugas? I did 3 Ugadugas, 5 Tataras. Like those are all bad answers. A good answer would be I referenced service information and I torqued it to 8.7 to 11.6 foot-pounds per the service manual. You don't have to remember it, right? But like when we do this work, we're doing it to a documented standard. Cool. And then it's going to say new oil drain plug with a new gasket, right? So again, I know there's 10 different ways to do the job, but if the service manual is calling for a new drain plug gasket and the service manual is calling for this torque and the service manual is calling for using clean engine oil to lubricate the gasket and the service manual is, calling for this capacity, right? We want to reference the service manual. The service manual is checked for errors. If you reference Google, especially now that it's enhanced with AI messes some stuff up, dude. Like if we were to check that, I'm not even sure that they'll get the right number, right? So 4 points, that's liters. We don't read no liters. We don't do gallons and quarts. 4.04 to 4.30 imperial quarts. Okay. If you were to do the oil pan alone, that's kind of interesting. 4.43 US quart. Oh, I'm sorry. Imperial quart and US quarts are different? I never knew that. 4.86 to 5.17 US quarts. Wow, that's trippy. Cool. And if you're going to do the oil filter, which is pretty much what you're going to do, right? You're going to do the oil change and the oil filter, 4.75 US quarts. And honestly, this is pretty good justification for why you should really check it after you're done because I was confused right there and I think I'm unconfused, but there's always a chance I'm still confused. How do you know what you don't know, right? And that says check for leaks, recheck the oil level, right? Boom. And it's overall pretty straightforward after that. This is actually a really cool chart, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. But later when we talk about oil changes, you'll see this. Which oil should you use? Well, 5W30 or 5W40 is good down to negative Fahrenheit, -10 all the way to 120. So that's good. But if you're not going to get below 20 degrees, you could technically run 20 W50. Who said so? The oil guy, Project Farm on YouTube. Like, no. The service manual said so, right? That's going to hold up a lot better in court or whatever. All right, cool. So I think we found one good example. How about we pick another one? Let's say we change the cars. I'm gonna pick this one because I can and it's gonna be fun. And how about let's go with the 2025 Toyota. Toyota. You want to look up how to do oil change on a Tesla? That'd be fun. Let's go with a Tacoma. Oh, you know why I can't find it? Because when it's a Toyota truck, you got to put a truck on all that. It's kind of a pain. So let's just say we did Tacoma 4-wheel drive with non-hybrid. And let's say that we went after lift points. How about that? Right? You guys are going to be lifting cars later this week, so you know. Lift. I'll just put lift. There you go. That pulled up pretty easy. Vehicle lifting, or I could jump right in and just do vehicle lift and support locations. So look at this document. All right, vehicle must be unloaded before jacking up the vehicle. Never jack up or raise a heavily loaded vehicle. So this is good because it's for a truck. Trucks can have any number of different things, junk in the trunk, if you will. All right, and then it talks about removing heavy components like engine, transmission, transaxle. The vehicle center of gravity will shift. Basically, predict. If you have it pulled a little too far forward on the lift, and you actually, let's say you had it a little pulled not far enough on the lift, and it might be kind of balanced when you pull the engine out. Now there's less weight in the front. It might actually be kind of heavier on the back. It might tip off. You guys have seen some of these videos on YouTube, right? Like, especially there's one that Corvette, the guy's doing some with the engine. All of a sudden that pops a little wheelie and the lift arms swing out and that thing blows fiberglass all over the place. Like, that was in service manual when you were pulling the engine out. Hey, anticipate the center of gravity shift, right? Now it gives you precautions for the four posts, the jack and jack stands, etc. But I want you to remember what this document looks like, okay? Look at that document. It's basically saying the center of gravity is 57.9 inches from that point right there. And it's saying if you want to jack it with like a floor jack, this is where you put the jack. The center of gravity is that symbol right there. And by the way, if you want to jack the rear, this is the rear jacking point. It's right on the rear differential, right on the rear axle. That's pretty standard. These points, support position. It's for the safety stand. You know what that means? The jack stands. Or a swing arm type lift. It's saying that's where we're going to put the lift points right there. Generally, as professionals, we're probably going to put the car on the lift. So we're going to use this. Make sense? Now, when we go to pull it in, and you guys, some of you've done the lift right, and some of you haven't. You're going to be certified. You need to think about where the center of gravity is. This one actually shows you. So we would want the post. This is like right where your butt is. So when you pull the car in, you want to look at your 2-post lift, and it should be like lined up with your butt right there. You want that in the center. Cool. This can be really tricky if it's like a MR2 or something, a smart car, some weird car. Typically, if it's a Camry or something front wheel drive, front engine, the center of gravity is like right by the mirrors or right around the steering wheel. And then for a truck, it's more like where your seat is, right around. Cool. And then it's saying like, hey, use your swing type lift right here. Actually, they want your center of gravity ideally right here, but on most lifts you can't. So what it says, I'm familiar with this. They will usually say you want this L measurement as small as possible. Position the vehicle so the center of gravity is centered on the lift. Length of L on the illustration should be as short as possible. So you know what the possible shortness is? Perfect in the middle. But a lot of times you can't, like, you'd have to back it up. And then if you were to back it up, a lot of times these rear arms won't reach where you want to reach. And then your front arms are going to be like maybe not even able to swing in and get the lift point. So it's just saying you could be a little flexible on where you spot it, but you need to have this as short as possible. That's all it says. It doesn't give you a maximum number, right? Now, how'd I know that? The service manual. The service manual said that, what rubber support pads to use, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? The shape of the lift and stuff makes a difference, right? So remember what those pictures look like, because we just found some pretty good information on all data. And let's just say we wanted to do a tire rotation, and you want to look up the wheel torque. How about the wheel? Let's do lug nut. And we don't want components. We don't want parts and labor. That's going to tell us prices and stuff. We want service and repair, but actually that didn't give us really great options. So it's not, you know what? It could be a hub bolt. Yeah, they're probably calling it a hub bolt right there. This is saying actually how to replace the hub bolt, I believe. Nah, this is way excessive. It's telling you how to do the stud, but all we really want is the lug nut torque. Sometimes it can be like a wild goose chase, and that's okay. How about we do wheel nut? Come on, keyboard. Don't be mean to me. Wheel nut a lot of times does find it. Tire and wheel removal will probably do it. Okay, there's number one. Uh-huh. 5-axle. All right, quite a bit of information here. And definitely no torque spec that I saw.
There was a tire and wheel installation.
You're probably right. That makes a lot of sense. All right, let's jump back in there, just like what you said. Installation would probably make a lot of sense. And if you're wrong, you're fired. And I'm not fired yet. There we go. Perfect. You got it. All right, check it out. It's saying for steel wheels, 154 foot-pounds, for alloy wheels, 97 foot-pounds. So if I bet you if you were to just Google this, they're probably not going to specify steel or alloy. You guys know how to tell the difference? You know the term steelies, black steel wheels? Those are steel wheels. Now they can be silver, they can be black or whatever, but they're steel. If you're not sure, bust out a magnet. I got a magnet right there. Bust out a magnet. If the magnet sticks to it, it's ferrous. That's a steel wheel. Sometimes they got a plastic hubcap over it. If it's got a plastic hubcap, that's, you got to take that off to do the work, right? But if it's an alloy, those are the nicer, fancier wheels. That's got a totally different torque spec. All right. And we pulled that from all data. All right. So all data has a bunch of information, but because this is Toyota class, we're going to jump right here. You guys are going to go onto the TIS system. You're going to spend a lot of time on there, over the course of 2 years. So for now, let's go with T10 users. You have a user ID and a password. You always have to click you've read and accepted. Now, part of the reason you're reading accepted is this is information for Toyota technicians and similar like Toyota students, not to be printing the whole service manual and posting it on the internet. That's basically what that's about. All right, so let's just say, actually, first thing, we could jump into service lane. And if I have any VIN save, that'd be cool. But you know what? I don't. However, I got a Toyota right next to me. So I'm going to take a picture of this VIN and then let's go ahead and type in the service lane for the VIN. And this is something that generally the service advisor does, but you can do it too. J, made in Japan, T, D, E, A, M, DE5 NJ 057. Okay. Anybody want to guess what this is?
The Celica?
My Celica's way long gone, caught on fire and burned to the ground. So no, good guess though. That was fun. This is my in-laws 2022 Corolla Hybrid. All right, so this is kind of cool. We can see some information. Where was it built? Japan. Sometimes on TI on it's not TechStream, chill. GTS Plus. It'll ask if it's like TMC or TMMK, so that's like US built or Japanese built, right? Tells you what grade it is. Tells you, I can tell you who the original selling dealer was. It was Crown Toyota, Ontario. And it tells you a lot of this information, engine number, etc. Tells you the next service appointment. We can get in the flat rate manual, which will be in there. We can actually get the vehicle window sticker, which is kind of cool. Like if you have a Toyota, you buy a Toyota, you can punch this VIN in, you can actually reprint the window sticker. Pretty neat now. And this is something I'm rarely in here. This is not normally where the technician works, but it's an interesting one. So if I were to click on campaign, no information, warranty, I can get the warranty status. The basic warranty, oh, not eligible. Aux battery, no. Wheel alignment and balancing, that's only good for 12 months, 12,000 miles, so you know. So if you have a car and it needs, some sort of an adjustments, that's like a 1-year warranty. So everything is not always covered. However, look at this, California emissions warranty. Yeah, the long-term and the specific components such as the CAT, that's still covered. That I believe is like 100,000 or sometimes 120 or sometimes even higher. Like additionally, if you fail emissions inspection, it's covered for 36 months or 50,000 miles. But if there are specific components such as the CAT, that's 96 months or 80,000 miles, I think the CAT might even be longer. Powertrain and restraint is 60 months, 60,000. So that's your 60 or 60K. That's how long the engine itself is warranted for. Corrosion's unlimited for 6 years. And then the hybrid is actually interesting. The hybrid battery itself, 120 months, 150,000 miles. And this is all specific to this particular vehicle. So if you or somebody in your family wanted to go buy a Toyota and you can punch this in service lane, some of you will have service lane. I don't think all of you will. You can actually find out like maybe the vehicle was in a flood and they've done a warranty block and there's no longer coverage. This will flag all that. This would be like, no, 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 no. It would all be red. It would all be red. Right. And the last known mileage, that is true. I'm not going to update this because I'm not actually really trying to do much. The last known mileage was the last time he brought it in. So when you buy a new car, it comes with, and I think I'll be able to see this in the history. It comes with Toyota Care. There you go. It's a warranty service contract. So you get, I think, 3 oil changes and I think some tire rotations, and you get 2 years basically. Your maintenance is paid for, right? So I was thinking I can look at. I thought I'd be able to see the history. I was pretty sure I could. I'm not exactly sure why I can't. I can look at the DTC history here. Oh, that's right. I plugged this one in at the scan tool. That was where the last known mileage was. I don't even remember what we did on it. Cypress College right there. There we are. Right. So you can even see, oh, this had some codes back when it was at the dealership and the miles were 4. So now you guys should know every time we plug in the scan tool, it uploads a report of what codes were set. I'm looking at these codes, a bunch of U codes. So there's communication and network codes. It's probably because the battery was dead when it was sitting in transport and they probably had to charge the battery. Right. So some of that made some sense. I believe there is probably a way to look more into history, but a lot of the history you'll do for your dealership is through the service programs like CDK, Reynolds, Techion, something like that is where you'll see the service history. So this one's just a little different. And then let's just say we'll stick with this one just for a bit. Let's say that we wanted to jump into TIS right here. Well, it blew that car out. That's okay. We'll start with that Tacoma. Remember how we were working on Tacoma, right? Tacoma. I think it was 2025 that we picked. We'll just run it like this. So now I'm going into TIS. This is the real service manual. Cool, but you got to see a little bit of service lane. So if we go into the actual service manual for that Tacoma, what I want to do, I can do a keyword search. Remember how we were looking for the wheel, the lug nut? I'm gonna search wheel nut. Okay, and this is gonna pull up different categories right here. So we could do quick training guides, repair manual, electrical wiring diagram, new car features, which is sort of like an overview. We'll come back to that one. Campaigns, accessories. Let's skip tech tip, Mexican tech tip, service bulletin. Let's skip Mexican service bulletin, Canadian service bulletin. Let's skip quick training guides. Let's repair manual. That's where we're going to do the bulk of our work. So in the repair manual, let's see. Tire and wheel installation. That's kind of like all data. Let's click that. Let's open this up. This thing over here is called the tree. So I can, this is easier to navigate for me, to be honest with you. There's all the information I need is on the left, but look at it. Wait a minute. Does that picture look familiar? That looks so familiar to me. Why is it so familiar?
It's the exact same thing from all data.
Bingo. So you want to know the reason why is Toyota sells the information to All Data, and All Data puts it up on their site. They regurgitate it, and then they sell it to subscribers, to shops and facilities, maintenance, repair, whoever needs to do the work subscribes to All Data for $600 a year or something, and they get that information. You get it right from Toyota, but probably it's gonna be the same info. But All Data does not have all this over here. All Data has lug nuts, and they have a lot of stuff. Their wiring diagrams are decent. They don't do some of the functions and features though, but ultimately you're still referencing the service manual. Make sense? All right, so you can see the lug nut torque for steel wheel, for alloy wheel, that's all the same. Let's just say we were to do let's go with the lift. How about that? We could probably pick it out through here. But the problem is, to be honest with you, I don't really remember where that's going to be at. Lift points. Usually the keyword search is a big help. So I'm going to actually X out of that second window and just do this like a lift point, which I've searched before. Okay, so if I go down here, again, it's going to be down in the repair manual. Ooh, a lot of driver assist, ADAS type of stuff. So how about lift, let's say location. Vehicle lift and support locations was a better search. Sometimes it's a wild goose chase, but you got to find it. All right, so here we go. Yeah, it gives us, wait a minute. Look at these words. Look at that picture. Look at those specs. It's the identical stuff, right? So this week, when you guys are pulling cars in, now that you know how to pull them in, I guess we better test you on that. But now, and you're slow, but you were careful. So careful's good. Let's get the speed up. But once you get ready to lift the vehicles, now you'll know how to log in, look up the lift points, be able to reference the lift points, and then, we'll get a little bit more practice after you do your lift it right if you haven't done it, and then give you some demonstrations. But you always want to, when you're new, especially, you always want to look this up. Now, once you've lifted 100 Tacomas, you probably don't really need to look this up anymore. But in class, we're going to have you look this up, lift it to the spec, check your lift points, make sure they're sitting where they're sitting. We'll give you some demos on this. But is this kind of making sense? How we reference how to do it? It's not real tough. It's just you could be complacent. So let's just say, for example, and this may be harder to find, but I'm gonna try. Give me that. Get down here. Let's go with how about a Mr. 2? You know what I'm talking about? MR2. See, the problem is we'll just roll it. We'll just roll with any year. Let's just see what we can find. Because you may notice some things can be a little bit different. It's probably going to be in the repair manual. Let's say it's a 94 MR2. You notice how this looks different already? Doesn't this almost look like a paper? Oh, because it was. This used to be a paper manual, and you just get the PDF version of the paper manual, right? So you can tell sometimes when it's older, it's a little different. So it's showing you the locations, jacking locations, jack stand locations, and you know what? It doesn't really show you a whole lot. So if I was lifting an MR2, I would be really careful because that thing's got a really unique center of gravity, and the older vehicles don't give you as much information. So service manual has it, but the newer it is, the more the service manual has. Makes sense. This one's a good example of not great. And if you also look over here, it's got less things to look at. There's less categories because it's a more simple car. If you look at it like this, that's it, because it's a 94. Cool, but it still has a lot of the specs. Whatever you need realistically will be there. If we were to look at, how about
A Scion IQ.
yeah, that one would be tricky. That's a great idea. Change it over to Scion. Change it over to IQ. We used to have one. We picked it up a few times, like just us, like the class. We just picked it up because we can. It was fun. Okay, let's search that one. Yeah, that one's an interesting one. I remember that. Yeah, this one should be good. Ooh, and it's new enough. It gives you the precautions, tells you use these rubber blocks on the pinch welds, which we have rubber blocks. They're not the Toyota rubber blocks, but they work great. And it's saying to use those. There's quite a bit of lessons on actually how to lift. So now we'll just focus on how we get the information. Set the jack stands and the lift points exactly under the specified locations. And it's also giving you some specs here, like do it at this width. Here's the center of gravity. It should be only 8.78 inches off of that lift point. See, this one looks a little specific. And I think part of the reason why is because, again, this car is actually pretty hard to lift. I mean,
Took
just look
me
at that thing. That's just sad right there.
took me like 10 minutes just to set it up.
Yeah.
Difficult.
Yeah. And that's what it looks like right there. It's kind of embarrassing, but really good on gas. The better version is actually the Aston Martin version. So, you know, they've got an IQ. They call it something else just to help them meet their corporate average fuel economy. All right. So there's some cool little examples. I'll give you a little bit more of a brief overview, but the best way to really learn TIS is to do the big worksheet that you guys will be doing this week, which you're going to love. So let's just say how to jump back into that. Now let's get out of that IQ. I just don't feel right about that. Let's make it a Lexus this time. Let's make it a RC. Now let's do a LC. LC 500. We'll do a 2025. All right, so let's say overall you get the car in, and maybe for example, you want to know they give you tech tips, so that's going to give you like some tips on how to do your job. This is talking about the multimedia recorder. How about service bulletins? Let's go with it's giving you a TSB, how to add or remove a key. So there's a TSB on this. I don't know what the actual concern is. It might just be an update to the procedure. Applicability has been updated to include 2025. There was a previous TSB that should be discarded. It supersedes these old ones, especially this LSB 0014-18. It's obsolete. Get rid of it. And it's basically saying the immobilizer, smart key reset, is a feature that allows registration of new keys when all the master keys are lost. Okay, so this is an update to the service information to make sure that the technicians know how to do the procedure. Maybe it wasn't included very well in the original service manual, but you need this specific tool, the DCA battery diagnostic tool. You need the tech stream. You could be the ADVI. It's going to be running GTS Plus though. You can see it right here. It needs to have this software version or newer. And then it's basically saying how to do it. You can follow this. How to, if they lost all keys, how do you delete all keys? Click page 7. Adding new keys, 24. Keys are lost or stolen and request to remove any key not present. All right, so what that means is, like, let's say someone stole your keys, but you think they may be coming back for your car at a later date. Like maybe it was some sort of like a domestic type of situation. You could bring in and be like, hey, I want all the keys wiped. And this is going to tell you how to do it, right? So the service, this TSB is just, going to give you the step by step by step by step by step on how to do anything and everything you may need to do on this. Cool. So this is an example of a TSB. Probably not a great one because you would have expected this to just be right in service information, but probably the reason why is because some people are struggling. They must be running into some issues with this. A lot of times the TSB will have also a labor time. So let's look for one that's a little nicer. To pull up just TSBs, I'm actually going to click right here. Service bulletin, tech tip. And this will be just service bulletins right here. There's only 5 of them. That's pretty low. That's pretty impressive. Let's make it like a 2023 then. Ah, I know what it is. Lift location. I have to delete that. All right, a lot more service bulletins now that I deleted the search, keyword search. All right, how about, these are kind of basics. Let me just jump under, it's still only 25. They don't have a ton of TSBs. Here's a cool one. If it has a film on it that appears to be brake dust. Let me zoom in there. All right, all the applicable models, which is like just about everything. Okay, again, there's a new tech tip. Oh, it's talking about the wheel film. Retain the wheel film on the disc during PDI. So it's just saying, like, don't remove the wheel film right away. Remove it just prior to the customers, but there's no labor time. So it wasn't really a great one. I was really hoping for one that had a labor time on it. I might have to abandon the LC. Yeah, probably not gonna be much on the LC. Let's go with the GX 460. Okay. Some of the similar type of things. More though. There's some additional ones. No, that's Canada. Interesting. How many do we have? So there's only 27. I mean, that's actually pretty good. The odor remediation process. That's good. Okay, I know about this one. So it applies to a whole bunch of stuff. Some '05 to 2024 Lexus vehicles have undergone water intrusion, may exhibit a musty odor present. All right. So if you were to get in a car and the customer were to say, hey, it smells like musty, moldy, nasty stuff, you'd look for TSBs, you'd find this TSBs. And then it's going to say a guide on how to prepare to treat the interior for odor remediation. All right. So look, there's an op code. We're going to come back to that. That is how the dealership gets paid. So you need to pull that op code. How much should it take? Interesting. It's called Z time. So that means you can get paid for the amount of time you spent on it. Right. So that one actually does have a time. It's just not a specific time. It's covered 48 months or 50,000 miles. It's saying to use the high performance charcoal filter, an insulator. We need a respirator, safety goggles, protective glove, 3M quat disinfectant cleaner concentrate, 5. You need one of those. A heavy duty cleaner, a pump spray bottle, scrub brush, painter's tape, ozone machine or equivalent. There's the part number for the ozone machine, right? So you need to get all those tools, and then it's going to tell you exactly what to do and how to do it, right? Oh, if you're pulling the carpet, that's why it's Z time. That's going to be a big job right there. Right. But it's just saying if you get it in and that's how it smells and it's under warranty, you don't need to really do an intense diagnosis. You need to just execute this service bulletin. Right. And that looks a little ugly. Oh, and look at that mold inspection network. You can get it on Amazon. I've actually seen this before. It's like a petri dish. You put it in the car and then give it an amount of time to see if mold grows. And then you'll know that it's been good. Run the ozone machine, crank the AC up and recirculation, etc. So again, the TSB gives you the procedure that you're going to do, but it also gives you some numbers, the op code and the labor time, so you can get paid under warranty. Okay. So that was a good example of a TSB. Additionally, what else do we have here? We've also got quick training guides. So let's peek at that. A quick training guide. For example, I need to go back to all the summary. You can see the quick training guide can be kind of cool. Like, hey, you want to do an MPI? Quick training guide. Here's how you do it. It tells you, do it like this, do it like that, do it like this. Okay, so a training guide is like a little instruction manual. It says, check these, here's how you check it. Check that, here's how you check it. Right, so a quick training guide can be really helpful. Gives you information. It's training. Here's tire wear, abnormal wear, etc. Right. So a quick training guide is something you will all have access to. And they have other ones too, like brake inspection and stuff like that. And then the repair manual, that's got the real bulk of the material. And then Mr. Clyde's favorite is the wiring diagram. So let's say that we were to jump into electrical, which is your very next semester. The wiring diagram will give us anything we need to do with wiring. So it gives us, it's basically giving us right here like an introduction. Here's how it works. Here's how to use it. Here are the symbols, etc. What the symbols mean, wire colors, connectors, information about the connector. Cool. A lot of information that's going to take you a while to cover next semester. Glossary of terms. And how about instead we jump into overall EWD. Let's say we are working on the engine and hybrid system, and we're working on engine control. If you want to look into engine control, here you go. Here's the wiring diagram. Oh, that's the PDF version. So there's your multiple page wiring diagram. If you wanted this wiring diagram usable, you can use the computer, but you could also print it and attach these together. That was actually not the one that I was really looking for, but that's the PDF version. I was actually looking for, that was kind of weird. Huh. That's interesting. That's not what I expected. So let me jump out of the GX. That was kind of a weird one to pick. Let's go with something more traditional. Number one selling car in the United States, the Toyota Camry. Let's do like a 2024. Sometimes the newest ones might not, might be missing something still, but it's probably got it by now. Let's go with the EWD. Just jump under that. Let's do, how about engine control? A25A is the 4-cylinder, 2GR is the 6-cylinder. That stuff comes with time. This is a little bit more normal. See how this is colored and modern and amazing? This makes a lot of sense. Let's just say we're looking into I'm tempted to go in that transmission stuff. Oh, here we go. Let's say we're trying to deal something with the fuel injector assembly number 1. It's a direct injector, and we wanted to do some testing. It shows you the color of the wire. It shows you the connectors. It shows you the actual injector, the terminal numbers. Again, the color. This is the same connector. CG2 is the same connector. Let's say you want to know more about the connector. You click it, and then I usually get a pop-up box, but I think I have this expanded just a little too big, so that might make it a little tough. Unclick that. Come on, sweetheart. Don't be like that. Okay. This one, I can't expand it too much on my screen too. Okay, so we'll jump right to where we were at. We were looking at injectors. If I click on that injector, I can click this box and it'll give me, here's the connector, here's the terminals, right? So you don't have to really remember all this right now, but the point being, TIS is the service manual and it has all sorts of stuff, where the wiring is, where it goes, what the connector number is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you wanted to know about this wire, I don't know, let's click that wire. You click right here, tells you all about where it's at. You can see where the fuse box is. You can see where, like basically where the source of power comes from, et cetera. You can see tons of information in EWD. So if you guys had a wiring issue or an electrical issue, where would you probably go?
Electric wiring diagram.
Yeah, there you go. EWD, electronic wiring diagram. All right, what about this one? New car features. New car features is like, when you're in school, you use the textbook and stuff, and that gives you the basics. But like when a new car comes out, the textbook isn't updated to the new car. This is almost like the book where you learn about the new features of the car. So let's just say that we were to look at, how about, well, you could look at the model and lineup, model code and lineup. It even gives you, looks like it's going to break down the model code for us, what it means. Left-hand drive is L. I never knew that actually. That's interesting. So if you had an R, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, the 7th digit of the model code was an R, that'd be right-hand drive. Engine specs give you a lot of information like this. Also tells you if you have the LE, it's this model code. It comes with sedan. A25A is the 4-cylinder. UB80 is the transmission, but it's a UB80E. Let's say that you got the XLE, you get the 2GR. That means the XLE comes with a V6. And the UA80, which is a beefed up version of the UB80 transmission, right? So that gives you a breakdown. How about performance? Tells you all about the engine, details, power output, RPM, the type of exhaust. A lot of details about the engine, specifically about the 4-cylinder, about the 6-cylinder, gear ratios of the transmission. First is a 5.250 to 1. Eighth gear is a 0.673 to 1, right? Like a lot of technical info. It's not exactly in the repair manual part, but it's in service info. And so the new car features is pretty cool. Let's say, for example, how about front brakes? I don't know much about the front brakes on this. Overall, it tells you the brake type, wheel cylinder diameter, Rotor size, pad material is D654H. If it's got the TRD package, you'll notice it's got wheel cylinder diameter different. Oh, so the wheel cylinder diameter is the brake piston size. You got a 60.3 millimeters. Why do you only have a 44.45 millimeters on the TRD? Don't you think it'd be bigger on the TRD package? But look, times two. So it's a two piston caliper, right? All this techie stuff, it's in here. It's all just, it's buried somewhere. Or let's say you're more interested in the exterior, maybe the interior, whatever you want to know about, it'll tell you. So like, say you want to do, you want to know about the, nah, you don't care about that. How about the theft deterrent? You want to know about the engine immobilizer system. Uses the ID code. It's registered. This will give you the whole prep on how the immobilizer system works. Cool. So new car features is not where you pull specs. It's where you learn about the vehicle. So when you get a new model that comes out, new car features gives you the info. They also probably make an e-learning that you'll have to do to stay certified. All right. Service campaign is kind of like a recall, but I'd like to define the difference. A recall means it's safety and the government's been notified. A service campaign could be much more simple. So let's say we find a service campaign. There's a lot of safety campaigns. Let's go, how about with like a 2020 Corolla? All right, let's see what we got. All right, so there's safety recalls. A special service campaign is different, not a safety recall. Now the safety recalls land under here as well. How about customer support program? There's a Denso low pressure fuel pump class action lawsuit. So that means it's not necessarily recalled, but it means like, hey, if you come in and you complain about this, this will actually have it be covered because there's a class action lawsuit, right? It tells you a lot of details, tells you when the, well, it looks like they did send the letters out. So it does look like they called these one in, but it's still different than a recall because the government didn't get them, like NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, was not involved in this. This is Toyota saying, hey, you know what? We got an issue. We know about it. We'll send the letters out. Bring it back. Cool. So sometimes these are more basic and sometimes they're more technical. This one, for example, is the ECU programming. And it applies to a bunch of different things. It's free of charge. They know that there's some, and it does look like they're also mailing out to the dealers. And then if we were to look at accessory, this is not original equipment, but this is like accessories. If you got a roof rack or something, this will give you all the info for the roof rack. An ashtray, for example. I guess they still have those. Haven't thought about that in a while. Right? Crossbars, home link, especially for opening your garage doors and stuff through the mirror, right? This is accessories, right? And then last and kind of least for us is collision repair. So if the car's in the body shop, they can actually do, get specs and repair information. Let's go with production date range, but I shouldn't have done that so quick. You saw right there, it said PDR. I had to pick PDR, production date range. I got to pop the door, look at the date. It's this date to this date. I pick it. This one I just made up. All right. But if you're going to do, let's say exterior, body dimensions, engine compartment, point to point distances, like body shops would use this. This is going to give us specs of all these dimensions. So if it's in a front end collision, it's called crunched up. The service manual's got all sorts of measurements we can perform to make sure it's straight or straightened or whatever, So this is all stuff you wouldn't normally use, but you'll technically have access to when you get your TIS all squared away. Cool. So I skimmed that. Summary, we're good. Service bulletin, tech tip, quick training guide, repair manual, electrical wiring diagram, new car features, service campaign, the accessory manual, and the collision repair. Those kind of make sense? Were those fun for you? You guys got any questions about just basic overview of TIS? Because we're going to jump into some slightly different. How y'all feeling? Worn out already? Don't worry, when you get your lunch break, you're gonna feel rejuvenated. All right, cool. So now you kind of know a little bit about service info. Let's jump back into where we were at. All right, so we finished here. Now let's talk about strategy-based diagnosis. And this is something that you're not really going to be doing diagnosis in this class. However, you all need to know how we handle business. All right, so sometimes cars come in for maintenance and we just do the maintenance that they say. And other times the car comes in because, we called them for their maintenance and we don't do what they say, but we do what the service manual calls for maintenance, right? That would not apply. What we're about to cover right now, strategy-based diagnostics, would not apply really to maintenance. In fact, it doesn't even really apply to a lot of repairs, but commonly in our business, people come to us with problems. So for example, customer states, like what I just had last week after you guys left. Remember that big white van you might have seen I pulled in? That thing is huge. That customer's concern was the AC blows warm, right? So often the customer comes in, they tell us their problem. Sometimes it's hard to get the problem out of them, right? You might say like, hey, well, what's wrong? My AC doesn't work. Okay, well, what are you experiencing? The AC doesn't work. Okay, is it that it's blowing warm air? Is that it's not blowing any air? Is it it's unresponsive? Like, what are you experiencing? So sometimes this takes some time. This is really the service advisor's job to get the information right. But it was me in this case. So I just said, hey, what's up? Yeah, the AC doesn't work. Well, what's it doing? It's blowing warm. All right, good. My concern is, customer's concern really, is air conditioning blows warm. All right, cool. Why? I don't know. I mean, we could probably list no less than 100 different reasons why the AC blows warm. All right. And that's very common for our business. The customer has a concern. We don't know what's wrong. It's kind of like you. You have a stomach ache. What is it? I don't know. You call the doctor. Hey, I have a stomach ache. What is it? And they're like, I don't know. We need to check you out. We need to diagnose you. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe you ate Taco Bell. It was a bad idea. Maybe you have stomach cancer and you have 3 months to live. I don't know. We don't know. They don't know. See what I'm saying? It's really the same in automotive. For some reason, people think if you're a mechanic, they can tell you the symptom and you're like, that's what's wrong with it. Honestly, if I tell someone the symptom and they tell me what's wrong with it, I already know they're so full of it. You don't know what's wrong until you do the diagnosis. Make sense? So we start with a symptom. The symptom of this van was the AC blows warm, right? So I brought the class in, talk about, hey, what do you think the possibilities are? And they came up with a lot of possibilities. Hey, maybe the compressor's bad. Maybe the relay for the compressor clutch is bad. Maybe there's something wrong with the knob. Maybe it's got a leak. Maybe it's undercharged. Maybe, like a lot of maybes, right? So you kind of start out with all these possibilities. And our job is to get to the root cause of the problem, okay? So overall, what strategy-based diagnosis is, it's a plan to approach any diagnostic situation. So my example was AC blows warm. We're focused on fixing the problem correctly the first time. So what that would look like is, hey, your AC blows warm. I think you need a new compressor. Didn't do any testing, didn't do any actual diagnosis. That's a guess. A lot of times what we'll call that is like break out the parts cannon. You guys ever heard of that? Break out the parts cannon. Just start replacing stuff until it's fixed. That is a good way to end up in court. That's a good way to be, that's a minimum wage mentality. Like that's just not really the correct way to do business. Okay. So it's a strategy that's going to fix the problem correctly the first time, right? And then we get in the next one. It's a scientific process of elimination. So process of elimination doesn't mean you replace this part and then that part and then that part and then that part and eventually you hit it, right? That's not a process of elimination. So let's just say on this van, this one of the students was like, hey, could it be a problem with the fan? How could I check a fan? Anybody have any idea how we could check a fan?
Visual inspection.
Multimeter.
Yeah, there's a couple things. I mean, one, I could just look at it. but I got to get it hot enough for it to turn on. But if I turn the AC on, the fan should run, right? So if I turn the AC on, the fan runs. Did I kind of eliminate it? I'm like, well, I don't think it's the fan. I did I replace it? No, but did I eliminate it as the cause? Yeah, because I looked at it and it turned and I felt the air and it was sucking air through the grill and pushing it out towards the engine. I'm like, well, I don't think it's the fan. I would document that, right? I would say, check the fan moved air, fan spun, cool, right? Now you may not find a list of things to check real cleanly laid out. So if you punch in like AC blows warm, what do I check? It might not tell you, right? So you have to have an overall understanding of the system. And that's not something we can give you today. And so that's why I had second thoughts about even bringing this in. But the reason I wanted to is because you guys got to understand all throughout the program, when you're learning these systems, you have to understand them so that you can perform this strategy-based diagnostics and not be guessing and not be wrong. You're going to be wrong sometimes, but not be wrong all the time. Make sense? So, talking with the students a little bit more like, hey, what other things could cause it? And ultimately, with a little bit of guidance, we ended up on maybe it has a leak and it's empty, right? And I said, oh, okay. Well, how would we eliminate that? And we hooked up the machine and we measured the static pressure and it was 0. And because they've been studying AC for a week, they said, okay, there it is, that we found the issue. Well, we found the issue that there's no refrigerant in it. But why do you guys think there's no refrigerant in an AC system?
A hole in the line.
It could be leaking, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, leak somewhere.
Yeah, but where? That's it. So, right. So the diagnostics continued. We found it, right? We eliminated a lot of possibilities. We found it's a leak, but now we're like, well, where's the leak at? So what do you think we had to do?
Plug up a smoke machine.
Mm.
Smoke machine's a cool idea. We don't usually do it with AC. With AC, we typically put dye in the system, like a black light dye. So we injected this UV dye in there, and then we charged it. We ran it. We looked at it with a black light, and sure enough, we found the leak. It was the high and low side pressure valves were leaking. So everybody got to see it bubbling. We did strategy-based diagnostics all the way through. And so we started with, look, it began with identifying the concern, AC blows warm. It ended with confirming that the problem's been resolved. Well, hold up. We had a lot to do in the middle. Then we replaced the bad part and we verified the concern was resolved. Do you want to know how we verified it?
Refill and test it.
Yeah, so that's what you want to do. You want to sit in that driver's seat and just feel the 42-degree air blowing all over you, and you're just like, oh yeah, oh, it's verified, right?
Or can you pressure test it?
You can. We usually vacuum it. So these are good thoughts. And without making the lesson about AC, the idea that you know some different ways to test it is exactly where I want your minds. I want your minds on how do I diagnose the actual problem? Cool. And that's going to be true from now till the day you retire. We're not trying to just chuck parts at stuff and roll out with the parts can and just start blasting. Every time we do that, somebody's got to pay. And so sometimes you'll be wrong, right? Everybody misses sometimes, but if we can check something, pressure test it, vacuum test it, dye check it, whatever, if we can narrow it down and scientifically eliminate what would be an incorrect diagnosis, that's the goal, right? That's going to continue to be the goal. And so as we get a little further, it's a twofold problem-solving process. It provides consistent roadmap for technicians as they address the customer's concern. It ensures that the customer concerns are resolved with certainty, right? So it's one thing that I picked up from Mercedes training. I don't like the cars. I don't really even like the people typically, or the customers, or the attitudes, or the driving habits. But there's been worse. What I did pick up from Mercedes was prove it. That was the thing they'd always say, prove it out, prove it out. So you'd say like, oh, I think it's got a bad injector. And they'd say like, prove it. You'd be like, prove, what you mean, prove it? I think that's what's wrong. They'd say, well then do a test and show me the results where it fails, right? And that's actually was a really good way to think about things with certainty, right? With certainty. I can prove that was bad and I can prove that now it's fixed. If you continue to do that and you continue to have that type of mindset, it's gonna help with this thing down here. Proper diagnosis is important because the purpose of the state and federal laws is to protect the consumers buying new vehicles. Many state laws hold the manufacturer responsible in case of failure to comply with state and federal law. Let me hold up on that. What that means, car comes in, especially under warranty. Mr. Clyde mentioned this a bit. If it comes in and it's got a customer concern, you have a limited amount of time and a limited amount of attempts and kind of a limited amount of guesses, you may say, to fix it and have it done. And everything counts against you, right? So if the car comes in and you misdiagnose it and you replace a part and then it comes back, that's really bad. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if the customer requests lemon law, it can either A, be settled, which they'll settle, outside of court, and they'll just say, what do you want? And the customer will be like, I want my car bought back. I want you to pay all the interest back. I want you to pay the registrations. I want you to pay everything and I want you to pay everything back. And if they win, the dealer may have sold a $30,000 car, but now the dealer's paying back the 30 plus the interest plus a bunch of other fees, plus they're paying their lawyers. It's a mess. A buyback, that's the lemon law buyback, is a mess for manufacturers. So getting this right is so crucial, you can't even comprehend it yet. But as you get further into this, you're going to realize this is really at the heart of what we do. And sometimes it's tough because you got the dealer trying to crank hours and be like, yeah, well, sell another brake flush. We got to make money. And I appreciate that side of things, but the manufacturer really cares about quality, correct diagnosis. Fix it right the first time. You're going to hear these terms over and over and over, and they're just unbelievably critical. Okay. So if you misdiagnose it, that's going against the lemon law case. You do that a couple times, you're probably going to lose. If you have it come into the shop and it sits there for a week, that amount of time is being documented. That's going against the lemon law case. Every day that customer is without their car is a big problem. If that vehicle breaks down on the road, that's going into the lemon law case, right? So all this stuff, you can imagine what we could do to prevent it is the car has a problem, we duplicate it, we correctly diagnose it with a strategy-based diagnosis, we perform the repair, we document it very well, we deliver the vehicle as repaired, and we never hear from the customer again. That's a car that's not going to be lemon lawed, unless of course the customer's trying to scam, and sometimes they do. But the thing to consider is customers, they got other things that they want to do. I mean, sometimes they're trying to scam us, but generally, if the customer's got the car in the dealership, there's probably something going on. They don't want to just be hanging out. Like the free stuff, the free donuts and stuff are good, but like they're not that good. They already seen all the Jerry Springer episodes. That waiting room is not really the place that they want to be. Make sense? With a few exceptions where they're trying to scam, probably there's something wrong. All right, cool. So as we continue, just so you know, I'm saying it too. It's challenging to find the source of every customer concern. I struggle with it myself. Even some veteran technicians have difficulty tackling diagnosis, especially on a new technology, especially on a new car, especially when you start to get into intermittence and just things can be really difficult. They are. It's not that simple. If you think that you're going to do the training program 2 years and you're going to come out a fully bona fide mechanic and somebody's be like, hey, I have a car and it struggles when I go up hills, you'd be like, oh, boom, it's that part. That ain't it. That's just not going to happen. It's more going to be like, well, I have some ideas. Probably need to do some road test, verify it, test it, right? You absolutely have to verify it. We'll break each one of these steps down one by one, but you guys got to understand what this job really looks like. Okay. That's my goal today. All right. So if you think about it, applying strategy-based diagnostic process helps resolve the challenging customer concerns in an efficient manner, right? That's fix it right the first time reworded. What if the customer has to bring the car back? A comeback. That's what we'll call those comebacks. They'll think either the work wasn't performed, like, remember I told you, like on the first day, we come from the chauffeur mechanic. We were We were lower class. We were kind of sketchy. We're making side deals with the mechanic in town. We don't have a real trustworthy reputation right off the bat. And some of you may never tell a lie to a customer in your life, but they're still suspicious, right? So if the car comes in, let's say it was that AC car, that AC van, car comes in, we verify the concern, we find that it was low on refrigerant, I recharge it, 2 days later it stops working. He may think, oh, you didn't really fix it. You didn't really perform the work. You didn't really recharge it. You didn't really, what'd you do? And it's more like, well, I charged the AC, but I just didn't know where the leak was, right? So it could be that they didn't perform the work. But even if you did perform the work and it comes back, the customer may think you didn't perform the work, and that's not good. The other thing they may think is that you're incompetent. It's kind of frustrating for me because the customer's like, well, just fix it. Like, dude, honestly, if it was that easy, everybody would fix everything. Like, this is a struggle sometimes. It could be hard, it could be difficult. Sometimes the jobs go simply and sometimes they're really difficult, but sometimes they are incompetent though. I mean, like, honestly, if I found that van and that van had no refrigerant and I didn't even put dye in it and I didn't even check for leaks, that is kind of incompetent, right? But in some cases I put the dye in there and I check for leaks and I don't really see anything and I look again and I look again and I tell them, hey, I don't see a leak. You're going to have to run it for a bit. And sometimes it can take 6 months or a year for that refrigerant to leak out. That's going to be a hard one to find, right? But if I try my best and it comes back, they still might think I'm incompetent, right? Or they think I'm trying to scam them. And that's one that's really common. You guys will see there's a discussion for ripping off customers that we're going to have popped up pretty soon. Mechanics, technicians, they've been ripping people off for a long time. Unfortunately, it never makes the news when you fix it right the first time. But if you try to sell a power steering flush on a car that doesn't have hydraulic power steering, it's got electronic power steering, that'll end up in the news, on social media, everybody hear about it, but then you fix a car right the first time and nobody knows, so unfortunately they're focused a lot of times on the negative. They may think that you're trying to scam them. That's just the way it is, sadly. Now let's break it down. Verify the customer's concern. Who can give me an example of how you would do that? You got to make the problem up too.
They say their driving is wobbly. You can just drive the car and then see that it's actually wobbly on the highway on the street.
All right, so I'm going to reword it. Customer states, and they might come in with that. Probably the service advisor will get this down. Customer states the vehicle vibrates on the freeway. You'd be like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's what you do. You get in the car and you get it on the freeway and you drive it and you feel it yourself. You have to. Sometimes the customer's like, I don't want you driving my car. Just fix it. No, 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 no. We have to verify it, right? We have to verify it. You get up on the freeway and it feels like a vibration. It feels wobbly. Like, okay, I verified it. Boom. That's it. It's not even rocket science. You just have to verify what the concern is and see if it actually does it. So I'll give you a situation where not verifying the concern got really sideways. And this is a fun old story, but I'll make it as quick as possible. So a customer bought a Ford Thunderbird. And this was in Detroit. So this was not my story. This was someone I knew, their story, and they were working with Ford Motor Company at the time. So this lady bought the car and she drove it off the lot, and it was the V8 Thunderbird, but it wasn't the top of the line model. It was just, it was a nice one, but not the top of the line. And she goes to drive it and she feels something weird. She comes back, turns around, tells him, hey, this vehicle loses power on the freeway. And the technician's like, okay, what could that be? Maybe it needs a tune-up. Tech didn't drive it. Nothing, was just like, oh, cool. I like doing tune-ups. Maybe a tune-up will fix it. So they threw cap rotor plugs, wires at it. Given this is a brand new car anyway, so it'd be like, why are we replacing this? That didn't make sense right off the bat. But the tech was not really thinking about strategy-based diagnostics. He wasn't really thinking about any of these things. So went ahead, slammed some parts in it, shipped it. Lady takes it, is gone a half hour, comes right back. Like, hey, it still does it. We're looking really bad. I'm gonna say we because I wanna make sure you guys understand. I'm not saying they, I'm saying we. Like, we screwed up. The mechanics messed up. We didn't verify the concern. Whatever. She comes back, says, hey, it's still doing it. now they get a little bit more of a higher ranking, more certified tech to say, okay, let me try to verify this. And they go to drive it and everything feels great. So wait a minute. The first tech didn't verify it and shot some parts at it. The second tech drove it, couldn't verify it, and told the customer, hey, everything feels amazing. This car runs great. They should have done that the first time, right? But the customer says, well, the other guy said it was broken, and that's why I replaced all these parts. See, now we're stuck. Tech A chucked a bunch of parts at it. Tech B says there's nothing wrong with it. Now the customer thinks we're scamming them. They think we don't know what we're doing. It's a big old mess. And so the Tech B, the second technician, was like, well, I drove it. Everything feels good. And then she says, well, drive with me. Okay, cool. Jump in. Customer starts driving, gets up to like 107 miles an hour. When it starts to go, burm, 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 it starts running crappy. And the tech comes back. Tech B is like shaking, like, I'm so scared. This was the it was horrifying, I tell you. I don't want to work on the car or whatever. And they say, I don't know what to do with it. Like, everything's good until you get to 107. And then it does, it runs horrible. So what do we do? So Tech B was a little more thorough, started a task case. So called the factory, said, hey, I got this case, at 107, it blah, 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 blah. It starts to break up and run bad. Tech A is doing whatever. Tech A is onto the next parts Canon job. So Tech B calls the factory, and the factory's like, well, just tell the customer that's normal. And they tell the customer's like, nah, it's not normal. Tech A told me it was broken and tried to fix it and couldn't fix it. I know it's not normal. See? And then they're like, well, we'll take you for a ride in another car. And they took her for a ride in another car, and well, the problem was they're sort of like, we're not going to drive 107. So it'd be nice to take for a ride in another car and tell her, like, look, this is the same, but it's 107. They're not going to give her a car and tell her to go drive 107. The tech is not going to drive 107, because if you get pulled over at 107, you can't be like, well, I'm trying to verify the customer's concern. The ticket's the same. And so it was really tough. They actually had the Ford reps come out, and the story was told to me I could visualize this. I think it was the 80s, and they were in this room. They're all smoking. I don't know why they're smoking. There's an ashtray in the middle. And they're talking about, like, well, what are we going to do with this customer? We don't want her to, try to do like a buyback. We want her to be happy. We want this problem to go away. So they're trying to like kind of make up a plan for how to deal with her. And one of the more technical people, like an FTS, when you go to the region, you'll understand that's the level of people that we're dealing with, says, well, we know what the real issue is. So let's just tell the customer, let's get her in here. She'll be probably pretty reasonable. Said, ma'am, we know what's wrong with your car. There's nothing wrong with it. Your car has tires that are only speed rated to 107. So your vehicle is factory programmed at 107 miles an hour to do a fuel cut. It's a governor, another word for governor, right? So when you get 107, it cuts the fuel. It drops down to 106, and then it re-engages the fuel. It gets up to 107 and it cuts the fuel. And so this is totally normal. And the reason we do this is to protect you, because those tires are only good to 107 miles an hour. Now the engine is good enough till 140, but your tires can't hold up for that. So this is a safety measure. You know what the lady said? Why the heck couldn't anybody explain that to me in the first place? Right? So this car got really sideways because Tech A didn't verify the concern. Had Tech A verified the customer concern, they wouldn't have been able to verify the customer concern. They wouldn't have thrown parts at it. They wouldn't have had to get the rep out. They wouldn't have had this woman thinking all, like we're ripping her off and that type of thing. So we really messed up on that. And there's countless and countless examples of, if you don't verify the customer's concern and you start trying to fix something that's normal, you can't fix it. Now you tell me, how do you fix that customer concern? You can't. I mean, that's how the car was made, right? So the main point of step one, is the concern normal? Is it legitimate? Can we verify it, right? So first off, it might be nothing. The customer may not even really understand. You can't drive 107 in this car. Actually, you can drive 107. You just can't drive 108 technically, right? Or other times, it's a legitimate concern. We need to verify it, because at the end, we need to verify the repair. If you never verified the concern, you can't possibly finish the job by verifying the repair because you never verified the concern, right? So then number two, research the possible faults. So if we were to drive the car and let's just say it felt wobbly. Yeah, we had that vibration. We're back to the vibration one. We think about it. We might have to research a little bit. That one doesn't need a lot of research. I would say my main suspicion would probably be maybe the tires need to be balanced. That's pretty common. Just knowing the system, I'd suspect tires need to be balanced. Now, how would I focus test it? That's when we actually do testing. So me researching is two. How would I check to see if the tires need to be balanced on step three?
You drive it.
You could drive it, but again, that's still just a theory. Has anybody ever balanced tires before?
You have to take them off and spin them on.
Yeah, take them off, put on the machine, spin it, and see what number shows. If it says zero weight needed, they're already balanced. But if it calls for weight in a different spot, that's how we're doing the focus testing. We're actually doing the diagnosis. If it calls for weight, we're verifying they were in fact out of balance, right? And then how would we perform the repair?
You just add more whatever weights it says, like you just add on to it.
Yeah. So we'll make sure that it's balanced. We got to change the weights, remove weights, add weights, whatever we got to do.
It's like with clips, no?
Yeah, it depends on the type. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so right there, that's how we perform the repair. Now, how do we verify the repair?
You put it back on the.
Drive it, yeah.
Yeah, drive it
Exactly
again.
right. Bingo. See, so now let's break it down. Customer concern, vehicle vibrates on the highway. We didn't do much research because it's not real technical, but we know how the system works. We think, hey, maybe it's got wheels and tires that are out of balance. Pull them off, put them on the balancer, get the measurements. That's our focus testing. Balance them. That's our repair. Put them back on, torque them, drive the car. The vibration is gone. You could write that up. Verified it. Did this work? Repaired it. Boom. Bing, bang, boom. Makes sense? That's clean. That's tight. That's nice. Let's say it's more technical. Verify the customer's concern. Customer's concern is how about the headlights headlamp is inoperative. When we go to research that, you're thinking the headlight's out. What could cause the headlight to be out?
Bulb.
Blown fuse.
Could be the bulb, could be the fuse.
Bad wire.
Wiring. All right. So when we want to research this, right, we actually have to research it. Where do you think we could research and gather information regarding the headlight and the circuit?
Yeah.
CIS,
Specifically?
EWD.
Bingo, right? So we go on TIS, all data, whatever material we got, we go on the EWD that gives us a whole picture of everything that could cause that headlight to be an op. What did the focus testing look like?
Testing individual parts first.
Yeah, so like using our meter to test the fuse, using our meter. You could visually inspect the bulb, but we could check the resistance of the bulb too, right? Voltage drop, available voltage, checking the circuit, right? Stuff you may not know much about yet, but the point is you're making tests, you're taking measurements, you're performing diagnosis. Make sense? That's what your focus testing is. Then let's say you find that there was a little chew in the wire or you find some defect. We would repair the wire. Then how would we verify the repair?
Put the light back on and turn the lights on.
And now they work, right? So if you do this on every car, I don't really see lemon law being a thing, right? Now, some are more challenging than others. If the concern is the vehicle dies while driving, but it only happens once a month, we got to verify that. Verifying that might be driving and driving again and drive it at a different time and drive it home and drive it to work and drive it over here and drive it over there. It's going to be very difficult to to diagnose that one. And if you can't verify it, you really can't diagnose it. And if you can't diagnose it, you really can't fix it. So we're kind of stuck on the step one. Sometimes if we can't verify it, we may call TAS and be like, hey, I got this concern. And they may need to check their whole nationwide information to see, oh yeah, we've got some of those cases or none of those cases. We've never seen it. We're like, You might have to reach out to the region, get with the FTS and just say, hey, I've been driving this car. You also need to put the in miles and the out miles. So if you say, I've been driving this car all over and it came in with 12,100 miles and it left with 12,101 mile, they're gonna be like, no, you didn't even really try to verify it, right? And this is a sore subject for technicians because it can be hard to get paid for that, right? So like diagnosis time pays really low, if anything. When you're driving and driving and driving, you could spend days trying to verify a concern. Matter of fact, I just caught my eye. Check this wire out. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm going to try to get the background right. You see that wire looks a little like slightly bare and kind of charred. This was an intermittent concern. I won't tell you what it's on because it'll embarrass me. Someday, well, actually on Tuesday, tomorrow, I'm going to drive my truck and you'll be like, oh, it's a cool truck, but this truck has always given me trouble. This was a concern that was an intermittent stall. But the problem was it wouldn't really act up. And then like it would, and I would start testing some things and it made it really seem like it was a crankshaft position sensor. And I was so sure of it. Like, but what's weird is it was already new, but it was from Amazon. So I was like, let me get an OEM one. And it was an Amazon one, but it was from Delphi. So that's allegedly the OEM supplier. Then I'm like, let me get an OEM one. So I put an OEM one in and it lasts like a month, no problems. And I'm like, yeah, I got it. You feel good, right? Yeah, got it. My truck's back to being reliable. Tell everybody, this truck is not a piece of junk. And then it stalled. And that was the thing too, when it would stall, it wouldn't restart. So I'd have to go around and like tap on the sensor and try. It was hard to get to. So every time I'd get to it, like I'd have to pull the starter down and goof around with it. And then it would work. So I was like, man, another sensor? That sensor only lasts a month. The first one lasts 6 months. The second one lasts a month. So I put another GM OEM sensor in there. And you know how long it lasted? Like a week. What is with these sensors? They're junk. All right, but you want to know what's honest? It was this wire. Every time I would do the repair, I would move this wire slightly and it would seem like it was good. And then after a little while, it would move just a little bit. And I kept thinking it was the sensor because I changed the sensor and it would, it was giving me a crankshaft position sensor circuit code, but that one was freaking tough. And honestly, if that was under warranty, it probably would have been lemon law. But because it's mine, it's bought, it's paid for. I named it La Toxica. I would have lemon lawed myself, but I couldn't. All I could do is keep trying. Like that one kicked my butt, and that was on my own vehicle. That's a nightmare when it's a customer's car. So sometimes verifying can be really a mess. If you compare it to a known good, record the VIN number, the miles from the known good, just document exactly what you did. In the case that you're not able to verify the concern, make sure you have documentation. Don't say like no problem found or could not duplicate. Be like, I checked this, I drove it this many miles, I checked this car, this is the VIN number of the car I checked. This is, document everything. And that's going to give you a more likely chance of getting paid for your diagnosis time. But also, if the car does go to court for lemon law, it's not going to be you. You don't get hauled into court for this. That's the good news. The bad news is whoever is defending, Toyota, they're going off your technician notes. And if your technician notes are vague, they're probably going to lose. So give the best notes you can give. Try to give the most details, how you checked it, how you tried to verify it, how you all these types of things, and then just hopefully you can verify it and hopefully you can fix it. Now, if task tells you, hey, replace that crankshaft position sensor, then you replace it. But why did you replace it? Because task said so. Makes sense? Not because you guessed it, not because you thought maybe, not because the tech next door said yes. Like if you get in one of these sideways ones, you want to follow the proper procedures. And so this is it. Makes sense? Can be a little tough sometimes though. I acknowledge. All right. And then when we're trying to talk with the customer, there's 3 things you got to know about, and they're the C's. There's the concern. In this example, check engine light is on. The cause of the check engine light was a faulty pressure sensor. To correct it, we've replaced the pressure sensor, cleared the code, road tested your car. Now it's performing normally. All right. So there's 3 C's: concern, cause, correction. Concern, cause, correction. Concern, cause, correction. This is going to have to be, you might as well get this tattooed somewhere. Concern, cause, correction. everything we do now, you have to think about the 3 C's: concern, cause, correction. Now, in the second half after lunch, we're going to get into the legal and, the state, Bureau of Automotive Repair. They're all over the 3 C's. The 3 C's is critical for Toyota. 3 C's is critical for the Bureau of Automotive Repair. Everybody's all about the 3 C's. These were just the most basics. Make sense? Okay. The concern. What is it? How did you verify it? How did you duplicate it? How did you, how? Give me all the details. Document it on the repair order. So when you pull the repair order like this, I'm going to say right there, concern. Yeah. Concern is customer states vehicle vibrates on the freeway, right? So the customer states it, but the service advisor may have a little conversation with them and make sure we get the right wording down. Make sure you understand. Make sure you verify the repair. If you don't understand, you need to talk with the customer. Someone needs to make a call, service advisor, somebody. You got to understand the concern. If you don't understand the concern, do not proceed. Make sense? Then when you really understand the concern, you really think about the problem, you think through it and develop a strategy to diagnose what the cause is. So the cause is details the customer concern, right? So like what caused it? Tires were out of balance. What caused it? That wire was actually, what really happened is I put headers on my truck and this wire gets hot right here. And it's kind of brittle. It was like baked. So as soon as I stripped all the really heavily built up conduit with like the metal wrapping, I got in there and I'm like, oh, as soon as I felt this, it was kind of stiff. I'm like, uh-oh, right? So that's what I would document. Perform this, perform that, visually inspected the harness, found the harness was kind of burned near the header, and check the voltage drop or the resistance. All your diagnostic steps live in the cause. The cause is going to be the big one. What we call the story, your diagnostic story will be under cause. It's what you did to get to the point where you know the cause. Now, I added something here because in talking with an FTS, former student, their focus is slightly different. When we do the cause, we're talking about the cause for the concern. Now, sometimes when we're filling out, reports, if you get to the shop foreman level or at least the MDT level, sometimes what the manufacturer wants is like the cause of the defect, right? Mostly as a technician, we're talking about the cause of the customer concern. But let's say that you're an FTS or something someday, and let's say that fuel, remember in this example, it was a fuel pressure sensor. Who do you think makes the fuel pressure sensor for Toyota? Any ideas?
Toyota.
Nippo, Denso.
Denso.
Yeah, exactly. So great answers. You would think Toyota, but probably not. Toyota probably uses Denso, actually. So if Denso makes this is trippy. I didn't really understand this side of the business. Mr. Clyde knows much more about this than me. From a technician, this concern is the concern, or the cause is the cause of the concern. But on the manufacturer level, they're like, the sensor was defective, great, but what caused the sensor to go bad? And I'm like, I don't know. The sensor's bad. What you mean? I diagnosed it right. I put a new sensor in, I fixed it. I'm the man. And they're like, no, but what caused it to, was it voltage fluctuation? Was it a failure in the fuel, in the diaphragm of where the fuel contaminated the electronics? And I'm sort of like, shoot, I don't know. So this was a cool perspective. Toyota wants to know what caused the part to fail so that they can take it up with Denso so that Denso can pay the claim. Denso pays Toyota, Toyota pays the dealer pays you. So there is a level of cause that's above and beyond what typically the technician does, right? So like the sensor failure, for example, why did it fail? I have no idea. I have literally no idea. I'm not at that level personally, and professionally, I was never at that level. My goal is to find out the cause of the concern. Someone's, and maybe you someday, I'd love if you surpass me. job may be to determine the cause of the failure of the part, right? Above the average technician. Cool. I want to add that one in there. It's fun though. And then the correction. But Toyota will a lot of times call this the remedy. So Toyota may say CCC, but they're probably going to say CCR, right? So this is going to be how you corrected it, what you did, when you're documenting it, make sure it says the description of the test, expectations, results, procedure that was performed, right? So right here, you're gonna detail the repair. Remove the sensor, found this, installed the sensor. How did you verify the repair though? That should be under the correction as well. Check for codes. There were no codes. Road tested the vehicle 5 miles. Codes did not return, right? That would be a good close. That'd be a good 3C story. And that would all be on the repair order, and that gets logged. And that's what we're doing in the second half, is talking about the Bureau of Automotive Repair, their side of things. Make sense? All right. And then this is the repair order where all this stuff lives. So this gets your information. This gives you the concern, but your write-up, well, back in the day, honestly, we used to write them with pen on the back of the repair order. Now you probably go into the system and you're going to type up your 3Cs. Verified customer concern. Customer concern was check engine light was on. Cause, and I literally write concern, apostrophe, and then I write it. So it's very clear that I'm doing concern, cause, correction. I want it really, very carefully laid out that it's 3Cs. Then cause, check this, measured this, found this sensor was defective. Here's how I found it was defective. Correction, replaced the sensor, cleared the codes, road tested the vehicle, no DTCs returned, right? 3Cs. And I would do that in the CDK or whatever program you're going to use. And that would be tied to the car. And that would close out the one line. Sometimes you have to do multiple of those, right? So we don't do 3Cs for customer request oil change. We don't do 3Cs for customer wants tire rotation. You do 3Cs when the customer has a concern and we need to perform diagnosis and repair, right? So we're going to practice doing that stuff this week. But right now, we're right where I wanted to be. So if you guys have any questions about 3Cs, this type of stuff, now's your chance to ask questions. Feeling okay?
Say we do find like an issue with, you said like with the wire,
Sure.
you change the temperature and it's causing to overheat. So we'd report that on TAS if we like find a supposed solution.
I get your question. So my example was kind of special because my truck is all modified. So you guys like mods, right? Mods are cool, dude. Mods are cool. Yeah, not for working on cars. They're not. When I put headers and I do all this cool stuff, like it really needs R&D. It needs a lot of research and development. What I ended up having to do is relocate the harness. That's not really your typical repair. So a more realistic repair would be, there's no reason that harness should ever get hot. If that harness got hot from the factory, that would mean Toyota would probably need to recall all those vehicles and relocate the harness. But guess what? Toyota's been very thorough. They've done the research. If they want to have a car come with headers, they're going to make sure the harness is where it was supposed to be. It's going to have the correct heat shielding. It's going to have all those details should all be taken care of. And do you know who comes up with those, by the way? Not technicians. Engineers come up with that type of stuff, right? So if it needs a different routing and a heat shielding and all that type of stuff, that's an engineer's job. And that engineer may be working on that system for a month to get it right. And then they're going to run test mule cars and do all this type of stuff to make sure those issues don't occur. So that example was a good one because the wire was sitting in front of me and I've been saving this, but that's not something you're likely to be working on in the dealership. If you are working on those types of things, it gets much more difficult because the car didn't really get proper engineering. The car got like backyard engineering, right? I'm putting headers on this. It's gonna sound cool, and a big cam and a blip, 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 because that's what I wanted. But in reality, I did not make the truck more reliable by doing these types of things. So that one was kind of tricky. Let's say it was more traditional, we're probably not going to be redesigning, right? We're going to replace a part. We're going to diagnose and replace a part. We're not going to be like, well, let me modify this. Let me customize that. Like, that's not our role. A custom shop, maybe, yes, but Toyota, absolutely not. We follow the service manual. We install parts just how they were called for in the service manual. We're replicating the process of the assembly line, really. So hopefully that's clear. That clarify?
Yeah, got it.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Shoot it.
So if there is a modified car that comes in, the customer have to inform like whoever is writing it? And then also does the dealer charge more if it gets in the way of a certain job the technicians have to do, or how does that work?
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna give you like there's a spectrum, right? So the first one is I got a student in the second year who his mom has a Subaru and his dad has a Subaru. And he was saying, oh, my dad's Subaru is leaking at the valve cover. And we brought it into Subaru and they said it's not covered anymore because he has a cold air intake. Now, did the cold air intake cause the valve cover leak? I don't know. Seems like a bit of a stretch. But if they see a modified car, they do have the right to be like, you know what? We don't deal with this. We don't do modified cars. Like, this car is no longer under warranty. We're not working on it. So that's option one, is just, if it's modified, just blow it out the door. Not even going to touch the piece of crap. Dealer could do that. I personally wouldn't do that. I'd more be like, well, I'm going to have you sign for your 1 hour diagnosis. I'm going to diagnose it. And then I'm going to show you whether or not the modifications cause the concern. So, second example, customer states the vehicle wears tires excessively, right? If I look at a vehicle that wears tires excessively and I realize it's a Tacoma with a big old lift kit, I'm be like, hey, you know, if your vehicle's wearing tires, it's probably because you modified the suspension. But you know what? Let me prove it. I'll put it up on the alignment rack and I'll show you all these numbers are all messed up. They're like, no, it's a defect with the Tacoma. And they'll be like, look at these numbers. All these alignment numbers are jacked up. You're going to have to pay that 1 hour diagnosis because this wasn't Toyota's fault. This is not a defect. This is a you thing. You had the lift kit installed, right? So that would be like more middle of the road. I'll work on it. But if the modifications are causing the issue, warranty's out. And now it's between me and the customer. And how much will I charge? Depends on the modification. It's hard to get a book labor time when the modifications change how you work on it, right? There's skid plates and things and stuff. It's not how it was supposed to be from the factory, right? That turns into like a much more tricky agreement. Now, I'll go with even another example. Let's say that same one, that Tacoma with the tire wear comes in, and I'm like, hey, this thing's modded. And then I talk with sales department, like, oh yeah, we did that. Yeah, the customer said they wanted Tacoma, but they want it to be lifted. So we sent it to XYZ off-road shop and we had it modified. Now it's back under warranty, but whose warranty? What do you think you know? Who warranties that one?
Would it still be Toyota?
Negative.
The outsource shop?
Outsource.
It would actually really come down to the sales department. And if the sales department had good documentation, I'd ship it over to the off-road shop. But if the sales department didn't, you know, then we might have to fix it, but sales department's paying for that, right? So ultimately, yeah, the modifications are something that you're going to encounter. You're going to see cars, you're going to see Tacomas with 33s, and they didn't come like that. And if it was me personally, I wouldn't be like, you changed the tire size and that's why your oil pan is leaking. It's sort of like, I personally like to say modifications are not a great idea because that's giving, you know, the manufacturer, that's giving the dealership reason to not cover it. But for me personally, if it's tinted windows, it's modified, right? What's that got to do with the slipping transmission? You know what I'm saying? So I want to sort of look into it, take it on a case by case, you know, but if the modification did cause the defect, then it's a whole different story. So Subaru blew the student out the door saying, yeah, it's modified. We're not going to cover it. And he was like, well, wait a minute. My mom's Forester's bone stock, same engine. It's got the leak in the same place and hers doesn't have any cold air intake. So like, it's pretty apparent that the dealer's squirming. They just don't want to cover. Me, myself, I would have fixed that one. Kind of makes sense. So it's up to you. Discretion of the technician, discretion of the dealer, discretion of the service manager, service director. And to some extent, the manufacturer too. You contact them and the DSPM or district parts service manager. It could be DPSM or DSPM, either way. They have a say. Ultimately, they kind of determine if it's covered or not. Cool. All right. Other questions? Those ones are good. Alrighty.
Is your truck is your truck a Silverado?
I've had many Silverados. You'll have to wait and see tomorrow. But it's a no for that.
Does it have a Cummins?
Does it have a what?
A Cummins? A Cummins? Cummins?
You'll have to wait and see tomorrow. No, it doesn't. That's
He
I
said
worked on diesels too long. I'm not dealing with diesels now.
Huh?
something you a cam. That's what he said. So
Yeah, you never
that
know.
less something or less.
Recording. All right, so you guys should understand the 3 C's mostly. We'll come back to that just a little bit. But right now we're going to jump into the flat rate manual part of TIS, which is different than normal, like EWD and new car features and stuff. So I jumped out of service info. I'm going to go back to service info. You guys can see this service information. This is where you'll spend almost all your time. But then let's say that you needed, you were going to do a job, you did a job under warranty and you need to get a labor op code. You'd go under reference information. You can actually change this back and forth, but generally technician is usually where I'm going to start. I'm just going to jump in there. Even I don't really go in here that much. We'll just do a Camry. We'll do like a 2024, search it. I think it's not actually under technician. I think it's under warranty and claims. Okay. Okay, you guys see right here, flat rate manual. So that's going to give you labor times for what different jobs pay. Okay, so if I come up here and actually want to make this just a bit smaller. All right, let's say that
It froze.
Yeah, he's frozen on my screen.
Yeah, he's frozen on mine too. I think it's everyone. I think his internet died.
What's going on?
Yeah,
Yeah, I was like,
He may not know, so let me text him. Sometimes when you're doing it, you don't realize that it froze. Yeah, he knows now. He's not.
Mr. Clyde, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So the e-learning is round 2. If we're like all cut up and we want to get a head start, we could start on them, right? There's no like.
Oh yeah. Get
Okay.
them done. If you want to get them done, get them done. Round 3's posted too, so
All
those have a due date, but there's no penalty for doing them sooner rather than later.
right. Thank you.
You're not
now yeah. So we're back. All right, so 2024 Camry, it might ask some little bit of information like the VIN or production date. It can ask some different things. Let's say we go with this one. Let's say we go under repair. Let's say we do some particular job. We were talking about electrical. Let's jump into electrical. Let's say we do a battery. If you replace a battery, it pays, interesting. R&R is 0.2. R&R is still 0.2. It's just like a combination. So if you were doing just the battery, it's 0.2. If you were doing a battery along with something else, it's 0.2. In other words, there's no overlap. If you're doing a battery charge, it pays 0.6. And each one of these has a labor operation number. So let's just say the customer came in, battery was dead. You do the battery test. First off, a little detail I can add is when you do the battery test, they want the failure codes that the machine generates. Put those failure codes in, and then you write down this number 190011, and that job is going to pay 0.2. So that's 12 minutes. Makes sense. Now maybe you can get some diagnosis, maybe not. All right, so that tells you how much the job pays under warranty. This is all warranty stuff. Let's say you did a starter. A starter pays 0.4. If you were to, let's check a bigger one. How about repair? How about engine mechanical, a block? If you were to replace the block subassembly, so that would be literally the rebuild. Really, that's what that comes down to. If you're going to R&R a crankshaft, you're deep in there. That would pay 21.7 hours. The labor op is 111011. Makes sense. Plus, you can add, if it has EGR and air conditioning, you can add 0.3 on 1.0. Or let's just say that you were going to do a timing gear, pays 9.2, and you could put in this operation code 111051. Okay, so this is to give you, while you're in class, this is to give you exercise of pulling your own op codes, but also practice for understanding how you're doing on your timeline. So let's say, like that starter, you guys are going to do starters in your first semester. It paid 0.4. They don't pay a lot, so if it takes you 2 hours, that means, you're not, doing it as fast as a professional technician who's got the experience, right? The other reason I really like to include this is, let's say we were to pick, how about lubrication cooling? How about the radiator fan, which I think will give us, and you can see it's not just the radiator fan, but it's in that area. Let's just say you're doing a radiator assembly. That would pay a 2.3, right? So if you guys come into class, in one of my classes, say it's air conditioning, we do radiators in air conditioning, we do condensers. But if you were to say, hey, I need a radiator in my car, can I do it? My answer is going to be, what's the labor time? And you'd be like, I don't know. So remember this, you're going to look it up in the flat rate manual. And if you come to me and you say it's 2.3 hours, and I know we have 5 hours in class that day, I'm going to be more inclined to say yes. Make sense? However, if you come to me and you say, I heard we're doing, well, the water pump's probably not bad on this one. Let's go with, in engines, you want to do an oil pump. I'm going to say, what's the labor time? And you're going to say it's 12.7 plus 0.3 plus 1.0. And the class for engines is 10 hours long. What do you think I'm going to tell you? There's no chance you're going to get that job done in time, right? So sometimes when we get ready to do this work, it's doing your homework, doing your research, looking up your labor times. Now, these are all warranty labor times. If we're to jump back onto all data and you were to look up what that would be if Toyota wasn't paying the bill, if the customer was paying the bill, customer pay, it's probably going to be 50% more. So if this is 13, 14 hours, it's probably going to be more like 21 hours is what we would probably be charging that customer. And that's like not overcharging. Toyota gets a special price because Toyota's Toyota, and they're paying the bill, and they get special deals. Basically, the manufacturer warranty is always paying at a lesser labor time than regular customers and stuff. Cool. So this gets you a little introduction. You'll find that some things aren't in there. So like, let's jump under brake for fun. Let's say that we look at disc brakes. If you're going to do front disc, see, it only gives you one side, but let's say you're going to do one disc on the left side. it's a 0.5. But let's say that you were gonna pull that disc brake off, pull the rotor off, and the bolt and the caliper was really rusty because it was a beach car and the bolt breaks off. Does anybody see any labor time for bolt break off, bolt removal, extraction, drilling, tapping, anything? It doesn't look like it. Oh, that's because that's what's called like Z time or straight time. Sometimes 99 will be like if you do a job that doesn't have a labor code, a labor op code, or other times if it's a bolt that breaks, right, you'd punch on, start working on the job. Boom, the bolt breaks. Stop. Punch off. Punch back on, work on the broken bolt until you fix the broken bolt, then punch off. That broken bolt time is its own thing. Then you'd punch back on and finish the rotor and then punch off, right? So your initial on and your last off are all for the rotor. Right in the middle, there's got to be a specific designated time for if you break that bolt off. Like, make sense? You worried about it now? No. But you have to have this mindset going forward because you're going to learn how to do a lot of stuff, but you also have to understand you don't someday you won't just get paid by the hour where you can be like, well, I did this, I did that. Like, you have to be very accountable to everything you do, which is good and bad. It's good because if you're really efficient, you work really hard, you can probably beat the time, probably. But it's bad because sometimes you don't beat the time even if you're trying hard. And if you're not trying hard, you won't beat the time. And if you're distracted, you won't beat the time. And if you're, tired because you went to the gym and your legs are sore and your legs are so sore you don't even want to stand up, so you just crawl from one side of the car to the next to push the lift arms under, you're not going to beat the time, right? So like, it's a double-edged sword. I said that on the first day. It's a double-edged sword. It's always going to be a double-edged sword. But at the end of the day, if you do all these jobs and you total it up and it exceeds the number of hours you're clocked in, cool. You'll get paid those hours rather than the hours you clocked in. Kind of makes sense. So this is a good thing to keep in mind right now. Then when you get promoted to a line tech, this is your life right here. You got to be able to pull these op codes, put them down. That's how you run your time. This is how you get paid. All right, makes sense. You guys got any questions on this flat rate manual? It's pretty self-explanatory.
I have a question,
Shoot
but
it.
it's not specifically for this. It's about this whole TIS program.
Okay.
How far back does information go? Like how much information? Like how many models? Like when was like? Because I know Toyota's been around for a while, but like I want to see like how old these cars are. Because maybe like I know one time I was before I even got into like I was working at a single shop. I got like an old like Toyota Crown, I think, like something super old. And
Mm,
like we didn't even know how to charge him because like we spent most of our time finding his parts.
yeah, exactly. And that makes it tough. Land Cruiser's been around for a while. Let's see. Well, I actually just want, I didn't really want reference info. I should have jumped onto this page. I actually don't know the answer, but I will try to find that out right now. It goes back a while. Where was that? Land Cruiser. I need to change the year. 79. Land Cruiser. Yeah, there's really not much on there. It could go back maybe potentially this far, but it's a little bit of a guess. I'm gonna pick 79 again.
If you go
See, I
to
don't,
manual, it'll
yeah, you can go back quite a while, but it's the older you go, like let's just say something I know that's in there. I think we could probably have a Land Cruiser, but it might not be like maybe let's say it's an 88.
just make sure you pick the repair manual.
Again, there's just some bulletins. It's probably
Pick a repair manual.
specifically.
Yeah. Oh, nothing there. Wow. Yeah. So, I thought it was just because it was defaulting to service bulletins.
Yeah,
the thing about
it is here in 91. So somewhere around there, it's probably going to depend. I don't know that it goes back to just a specific year, but I don't see like the Toyota Corona on there or, you know,
click on
something.
one of those just to show them. Click on one of those,
The crown.
like the heavy.
Let's go
any,
with
any of them.
engine tune-up.
So what you're gonna have here is it's basically the book as a PDF.
Yeah.
It's not an interactive. There are some blue links that will link to other pages, but it's not like the current repair manual
Yeah.
information for a newer vehicle where there's lots of links and hotspots to get you to what you need to know. So it's very much just like thumbing through a PDF.
Yep. Literally.
Also, does this only have cars sold in America?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to like know, doesn't really matter though.
Yeah. So anything by TMNA supports the United States. So
So no
you do
right-hand
some
drive
stuff in there
chasers.
about, yeah, you're not going to have right-hand drive. There is some content that's created by Japan, which is why it says is it Mexico or is it US? Okay, so they're not going to take that out, but anything that's in here is specifically geared to repairs in the United States. So if you're trying to bring in a right-hand drive vehicle, it's there might be some information you could cross-reference based on the engine type, but as far as the specific vehicle, no.
Yeah, there's not much.
Yeah, if you wanted to, I don't know why anybody would want to do it, but if you wanted to bring over a right-hand drive Corolla, you could, once they're 25 years old. But again, those are so old, they won't be in this material anyways. And
Yeah.
So you'd have to, and the book would have been published in the language it was sold in. So if it was from Japan, the service manual will be in Japanese, most likely.
Yeah.
It's paper.
Yeah, it looks like it's pretty tough to get anything on the Hilux for sure. So I think overall you guys should be pretty rocking on the flat rate manual. It's not really crazy tough. A little bit later, we do something on flat rates, so you guys make sure you really, really understand it. If you don't have any questions specifically to the FRM flat rate manual, we're ready to move on. So you ready? All right, next thing on the agenda is write it right. You have access to this. It's very similar material in your in Canvas. You have a PDF, but this is a presentation from the California Bureau of Automotive Repair. So that's like if somebody commits a crime, you call the police, right? But if somebody doesn't fix your car well, or you think that something's unethical, like you don't really call the police. The police, I mean, if they're robbing you, yes, but if it's more automotive specific business, how the business is run, this is the authority on that type of stuff, right? So Bureau of Automotive Repair, remember that. It's a guide for automotive repair dealers. And it gives a lot of legal definitions. So again, this is not so much to make you an expert as much as you need to be educated because this is the business side of what you're getting into. All right. And yes, there's a quiz. So be ready for that. We're going to define the written estimate repair order, what it needs. First off, by definition, who is the customer? Customer is the person presenting the motor vehicle for repair and authorizing the repairs for that motor vehicle. That's who the customer is. And then it defines what must be on a written estimate. Answer is the written estimate must contain a description of the specific job, the estimated price for parts and labor, the vehicle's odometer reading. Okay, and the parts must be identified as new, used, rebuilt, or reconditioned. And all this is so that the customer should have a pretty good understanding of what they're getting into. Make sense? So if your plan, you guys have seen some social media stuff like, oh yeah, we're sorry to let you know your car needs a transmission. The customer says, what's a transmission? And then the service advisor says, never mind, you need two transmissions. You know, like there's some jokes and some funny stuff. This is the law that we have to follow when we provide goods and services in automotive, right? So it should be clear. For example, if you say, oh yeah, we're going to get you a new engine, what does new mean? Does new mean new to you? Not in this case. New means literally new. If it's used, it needs to say used. That's what it's specifying. And then another really important point that some people get a little confused on, how are the repairs authorized? So the repairs originally, when they drop it off, the customer needs to sign, and there's some details we'll cover later, but they need to get an estimate before we proceed on anything. And after the customer authorizes the repairs, the copy of the estimate becomes a work order. So in the very beginning, that repair order looking thing, that's actually just an estimate. You know, we haven't really done the repair. So we'd start off with, you know, the customer states, we use that example from before. They think they have a vibration at freeway speeds. Right there, they're going to sign some paperwork and stuff. That's technically not the repair order yet. That's really the estimate. And then the technician's going to look at it and say, okay, the customer concern, right? So we're going to call it the repair order. We're going to continue to call it the repair order, but technically it's not really a repair order until the customer authorizes the work, right? So let's say it's the estimate. We look at it, we say, yeah, we want 0.5 to diagnose your vibration. It's a half an hour, and it's going to cost you $75. And the customer's like, what? I get free diagnosis. I'm like, good, take it to AutoZone. They'll give you free whatever you want. It won't fix anything, but by all means, right? So when they actually write it up, we're going to probably charge an estimate fee or like a diagnosis fee. Then we'll bring it in. We'll do the things we talked about earlier, verify it, theorize it might be tire balance, pull the wheels off, put them on the balancer, see what the balances say. Oh, yep, you need a balance. At that point, we stop, we prepare an estimate for the customer, and we quote them how much it's going to be to do the repair. You understand? And then the customer has to agree to that. And that's kind of what we get into a little bit later. Then we can do the repair. You can't just start fixing stuff. You can't just be like, well, the customer brought it in, so they want it fixed. Like, it doesn't work that way. You absolutely have to give them an initial estimate. And then when you diagnose it, you're going to have to give them a supplemental estimate and they have to approve it. Okay. And that's what it's saying. Now, there are unusual circumstances, and we'll cover those. All right. But in that estimate, does the estimate have to include the sales tax? The answer is no. Does the estimate price include toxic waste and disposal? Well, yes. For example, if we're doing oil or coolant or something, if disposal of toxic waste is applicable to the vehicle being repaired, the fee charge must be itemized separately on the estimate. If you charge a fee, your Environmental Protection Agency identification number must be presented on your estimates and invoices. So we have to show it, and it has to be separate. So they can't be like, oh, your bill's 100. Oh, but by the way, there's an extra $7 for hazardous waste oil. Like, it has to be part of the estimate, has to be listed. It has to be itemized. Make sense? It's just to make it more clear, very clear. Now, some unusuals. We got unusuals, believe me. Unusual would be any instances the customer cannot be present to sign the initial estimate or work order during normal business hours. For example, the customer may drop it off at the facility prior to or after business, so out of hours, or they might even have it towed in. So if they have it towed in and they don't catch a ride with the tow truck driver, they're probably not going to be there, right? So that happens. So how do we get their authorization? Prepare a written estimate work order before any work is initiated, including any teardown. Come back to that. Contact the customer by phone, fax, email, and more recently, actually, text is approved. Text is included now. Obtain the customer's authorization. Properly document the customer's authorization. All right. So if you call the customer, hey, we have an estimate for you. It's going to be $125. Check it out. Would you like to proceed? Yes or no? And if they say, yeah, go ahead. You'd say, talked to the customer at this day, at this time, and they said, yeah, go ahead. Thank you very much. Click, and then you document that. That's okay. Okay, and later we have to properly document the authorization on the work order and the final invoice. So we have to have that documented on the final invoice. And you must obtain and properly document the customer's authorization for the specific job before beginning the work. So if the customer calls you on the phone and says, hey, I'm towing my car in, it died. Before you can start the work, you have to take the car in, write a repair order, and call them and formally give them an estimate. You can't just be like, well, you told me you were towing it in. You have to have the paperwork prepared and then call them specifically. Make sense? Even if they have a little note that they want to be performed, the note does not constitute authorization. You still need to provide an estimate. So if they write you a little sticky note saying, just fix it, that ain't going to fly. Right? They might say that, and that's nice, but you got to make an estimate. You got to call them. They got to give authorization. Now, you don't call customers typically, but the reason that this is really important is so you guys understand the flow. When the car comes in, you verify the concern based on what the repair order says, right? And then all this stuff has to happen. And generally the service advisor would do this. Okay. But it's all got to happen. Now we need additional authorization. So here we go. Let's say, can the work be performed in excess of the work listed on the estimate or repair order? All right. If the customer drops it off and says, replace my battery, and then you're working on it and you see that the battery cables are corroded and the battery cables need to be replaced, you can't just replace those. If it's above and beyond what the estimate said, you need to stop. Only if the customer authorizes the additional work. So you need to stop, give them a supplemental estimate and say, hey, you know what? We quoted you for a battery. When we got into it, we realized the battery terminals and cables and stuff are corroded. We're recommending you do an additional X, Y, and Z. Right? Then the customer can say yes or no. Right? But you can't just do it. You can't be like, well, they obviously have to fix it. There's no obvious. Okay. Now the customer may designate in writing another person to authorize additional repairs. So let's say it's grandma and grandma's got Alzheimer's. Grandma can't even remember where her car's at. Grandma can authorize. Granddaughter can make the call. Granddaughter can talk with granddaughter. Granddaughter can call the shots. That's fine. But grandma has to specifically designate that in writing. Okay. And then you're basically doing the same thing, except with granddaughter, not grandma. Okay. And then additionally, let's say, and that additional person, by the way, can't be like another a dealer or anybody, or like another shop. You can't be like, don't ask me, ask this other shop. It's more like a person, not a business. Make sense? And then can you sublet the work? Does anybody know what sublet means?
Let someone else do it.
Sub it out. Sub it out. So like, let's say the car comes in, and there's a crease in the headliner, and you need to take the headliner out to put a new headliner in. On some cars, the headliner only fits out the windshield. So if you needed to take the windshield out, technicians, we don't typically take windshields out. We might call Safelite and be like, hey, can you come R&R a windshield? Safelite will show up, cut the windshield out. We'll do the headliner. Safelite will put a new windshield in, or put the same windshield in, right? That would be a sublet. If they drop it off at the service department for a backup alarm malfunction, like parking assist, and we need a sensor, we need to replace the sensor. Those sensors need to be painted to match. We would sub it out to the body shop. We could sublet a repair for the windshield. We could sublet a repair to a body shop. No problem. You can sublet work. However, if you sublet work, you must include that fact on the written estimate or work order and the final invoice. You shall be responsible in any case for all service work in the same manner as if you or your employees had performed the repairs. Interesting. And if the customer asks, you have to disclose name and location of the facility that performed the sublet. So let's just say you sub it out to SafeLight. SafeLight does a bad job on the windshield. Customer comes back and says, hey, my windshield's leaking ever since you did this headliner. You can't be like, oh, well, that's not our fault. SafeLight did it. Bring it to them. No. It was your repair order. You sublet it to SafeLight. That means the customer drops it off with you. You contact SafeLight and say, hey, we sub you a lot of jobs. This one got messed up. Get over here and fix it. They can't get passed off like that. All right. And then remember, you're responsible for documenting the service work performed by the sublet facility. It's on you. Makes sense? So now, if they drop it off and you say, oh, take it down here to SafeLight, then it's on them. But if they drop it off and you arrange it, you sublet it, it's on your shop. Cool. And then let's say that we do that estimate and we need additional repairs. Specify in the estimate or work order the additional repairs, including parts, labor, total extra cost. The additional work would be in excess of the original work. And then note how the repairs were authorized. By phone, fax, what the heck is that? Email or text? That's fine. We have to note date, time, name of the person, phone number, description of additional repairs, parts, labor, total additional beyond what was already agreed to. Make sense? Okay. And then if it's email, that should be printed and attached via a hard copy. Now, something interesting, I got a little inside info. It's less about the bar, but if a customer gets sideways well, they would go to the bar if it's a customer, right? But let's say that the customer is Toyota. Toyota pays these under warranty or whatever. If Toyota thinks there's some funny business going on, like you're scamming the warranty time, you do oil pans all day, every day because they pay good. And they're kind of like, why are you doing so many oil pans? We're going to have to come check this out. If they show up, your dealer has to produce 200 repair orders for every hour that this visit takes place. So your dealers are going to have a good way to keep repair orders really organized. And a lot of times they can demand hard copies and sometimes they'll just do it digitally. But if it's a Bureau of Automotive Repair, we have to produce them. But if it's a Toyota and it's a warranty audit, you got to be able to produce 20 ROs per hour, every hour. It's pretty interesting. Okay, and then when we go to bill them, right, the final invoice is basically, we've done all the work, you're going to write up an invoice, and that's what they're going to pay, all right? So again, the shop must provide customer the invoice upon completion of the repair work. What must be on the invoice? Okay, this is what the customer leaves with. Your business name as registered with the bar. All right, so we mentioned earlier, mobile mechanic. You call mobile mechanic. His name is Mo. Mo the mechanic. What's his Bureau of Automotive Repair number? Ain't got one. It's one of those things. License and registration. I got the license God gave me. Like that means you don't have a license. No Bureau of Automotive Repair number means they are not registered with the Bureau of Automotive Repair, which means they don't really have a license for doing this type of business. Make sense? Now, some mobiles could. A mobile mechanic that has an actual Bureau of Automotive Repair number, that would be a legit one. They do have them, but there's a lot of people with no number. If you're using the mobile the mobile mechanic, get it, mechanic, and something goes sideways and you call the bar and you're like, hey, Mo ripped me off. And they're like, who? Yeah, Mo? Who? Yeah, Mo the mechanic. They're like, we don't even know who Mo is. Like Mo's not, you have no protections as offered by the Bureau of Automotive Repair if it's a non-Bureau of Automotive Repair facility. Make sense? All right. Your address, your bar registration number, there you go. So that's all business info. And then additionally, it needs to have an itemized descriptions of labor that clearly explains all service work performed and any parts supplied. All right. So, and this is one that's not always real well followed. If a customer drops their car off for brakes, that can mean a lot of different things, right? If I say, I did your brakes, what's that mean? I don't really know. See, that's what they're going after here. If you replace their front pads and resurface the rotors, that needs to be itemized. Replaced front brake pads, resurfaced front rotors. If you replaced front rotors and front pads and rear rotors and rear pads, that would all need to be listed. Like you need to be specific. You can't say, I did the brakes, replace the brakes. See what I'm saying? It's got to be very specific. Cool. And then also what each part supplied must be listed in common terms so the customer can understand what they purchased. So if you say, I got you a new engine, that would be like a new engine. You can't be purposely misleading. If it's new, it's new. If it's used, it's used. If you replaced an exhaust manifold, you can't say fixed exhaust, or you can't say, you know, you just can't be misleading. It has to be very clear what exact parts you used. Make sense? And then let's just say this is a little bit more collision. So, well, actually, this one's for both. Each part you supplied must be listed in common terms so the customer can understand what they purchased and the price of that part. Oh, the price. So we have to specify what price it was, new, used, rebuilt, reconditioned. And if it's crash parts or original equipment or non-OEM, in other words, aftermarket. So we don't have to do that on the technician side. If we put sway bar links in, we don't necessarily have to say they're aftermarket sway bar links or they're OEM, original Toyota sway bar links. But collision does. If it was crash parts, they have to specify aftermarket or OEM. They have to. Has more to do with like OEM parts are crash tested. Aftermarket parts, maybe not. Makes sense. So that's their concern there. And then additionally, labor operations, and parts must be listed even if the work is done under warranty. All right. So if you drop it off at the Toyota dealer and you're like, hey, my car's broken, fix it. They can't just be like, it's fixed. They have to tell you, we did this, we did that, we replaced this part, we did this labor. They have to tell you everything they've done. That has to be all documented. Kind of makes sense. All right. And then there should be subtotals, sales tax, notations of additional authorizations. If additional authorization was verbal or by telephone, again, you must either make the same notations on the final invoice as the work order, or you must use the acknowledgement and notice of consent form. And then if additional authorization was by fax, you attach a copy of the fax, and similar with the email, you attach a copy of the email. And then if there was any toxic fee charged, remember that needs to be separate, right? It needs to be clearly seen. Cool. Okay. Parts are interesting. Do I have to return the old parts? I'm just going to call it how I see it. The old parts. You replace a part, do you have to return the old part to the customer? Yes. But only if requested by the customer at the time the estimate or work order is written. So if the customer comes in and says, hey, I want the old parts back, that's it. They're getting the old parts back. There could be some exceptions though. So like, for example, you're not required to return a part back to supplier. Let's say it's a core charge. If you're getting a new starter, that starter is probably going to have a core charge. You could tell the customer, you should tell them up front, you don't actually have to. You should say, hey, you can't have your starter back because that has to go back for a core charge. And the core charge may be $70. And if the customer says, well, I want it back, then you'd say, no problem, but you're going to have to pay the $70 charge. You can't get the core charge credit, but not leave the core with us to send back because the shop gets the credit from the parts store. Right. And generally, this isn't necessarily all documented, but if you go to pick up the vehicle, they could probably ask for parts then too. You know, after the car's gone and stuff, that's the only time it's safe to really throw them away. But they should be asking up front. They should be. Okay, now what about if it's a no charge or a warranty repair? I kind of already answered this one. Car comes in for an oil change. Dealer notices, hey, the oil pan's leaking. Well, let's just fix it. Well, first off, you can't. You have to get authorization. And secondly, even if Toyota paid the bill, you have to list that that work was done. That has to be on the final invoice. Make sense? Parts, everything, parts, labor, all that stuff has to be listed, even if it's covered under warranty. And then what about if you walk into the waiting room and tell the customer, hey, you want to do this additional work? Yeah. If they say yes, you still must write complete notation of the final invoice. You get the customer signature up front. Then if they say, yeah, I want to do more work, you would say, they said yes at this time. Makes sense. They don't necessarily have to keep signing over and over, but you have to note that they said yes when I talked with them in the waiting room at 4:12 or whatever the time is. Okay. And a lot of times they do sometimes like to get another signature or initials, depending on what form you're using. And then how long should the shop keep a copy of the invoice? Interesting. The invoice, along with the other records pertaining to the repair, shall be maintained and available for inspection by the bar for at least 3 years. So 3 years from when you do that repair, someone from the bar, if they get a concern or complaint or whatever, they can show up and say, hey, I'm going to need to see that repair order from 35 months ago. And you'd be like, oh, I threw it out. Wrong answer. Not a good answer. Okay. Copy of the estimates, invoices, parts, sublet repair, all that stuff should be open for reasonable inspection and reproduction by the Bureau or other law enforcement officials during normal business hours. Okay. Oh, tip. If you're storing the items electronically, remember to scan all documents that include a customer signature. I see. All right, so when we go to do this estimate, there's some things you must know, especially if it's got to do with teardown. So let's just say a teardown estimate is when it's necessary to disassemble a vehicle or component to find the problem and then prepare a more complete written estimate. Transmissions is the first thing that comes to mind. Vehicle has transmission issue, technician does some reasonable diagnosis, a road test, some scan tool testing, and says, you know what? We know the problem's inside the transmission, but we don't know what, right? Does it need a full replacement? Does it need a rebuild? Does it just need a valve body? Does it need maybe like a small repair? Maybe it's a sensor. Maybe you have to tear it down to determine exactly what it needs. That's fine. That's fine. We can say, well, we need teardown time. However, the teardown estimate must contain everything required for a written estimate with the addition of the following. The cost of the teardown estimate must include a price for reassembly and the cost of items such as gaskets, seals, and O-rings, which are normally destroyed during disassembly, and the maximum time it will take to reassemble the vehicle in the event the customer does not want to have the repairs done. Maximum time is counted from the date of authorization for the teardown. All right, hold up. So customer drops it off. You diagnose it as some sort of transmission issue. You're going to need to tear the transmission down to give a more thorough estimate. First off, dealers don't really do this. The dealer would have a very hard time, tearing it down and waiting for approval. So the dealer's probably going to say, you know what? If we know it's in the transmission, especially the Toyota dealer, we're going to sell you a new transmission. And that makes it really easy for providing an estimate. But, if it's a shop, or some dealers do this, by the way, some of the domestics, if they're to say, we don't know if it needs a new one, we might be able to fix it, but to really know, we need to tear it down. That estimate needs to include enough time to put it back together. You can't say like, oh yeah, we'll pull it out, we'll tear it down, give us 8 hours. You spend 4 hours pulling it out and 4 hours tearing it all the way down. And then you tell the customer, hey, it's going to be $8,000. And they're like, nah, never mind. I'm not going to fix it. You can't just throw that transmission in the trunk and tow the car out. Makes sense? If you are going to authorize teardown, it needs to include the time required to put it back together. You don't have to fix it, but it needs to include the time to put it back together to basically how you got it. Right? That's how we're supposed to sell it. Now, does that mean you can't work on you can't work out a deal with the customer? Like, hey, we told you it was going to be 12 hours for this teardown. We got into it. It's totally wrecked. You don't want to fix it. Pay us $6 and we'll chuck the transmission in the trunk and haul it up on the tow truck. I'm not saying you couldn't work that out, but if the customer complains and bar gets a hold of it, you lost. You're done. Right? You're supposed to include the reassembly in the price. Cool. How about this? What if the vehicle can't be restored to its former condition? Now, sometimes stuff gets messed up. Maybe we can't get it back together because something broke on the way out or whatever. If the act of teardown might prevent the restoration of the components to its former condition, you shall inform the customer of this potential prior to starting the teardown. In addition, the teardown information must be documented in the work order containing the teardown estimate before the work order is signed. So if you're thinking like, hey, this thing's pretty rusty, we're going to take that transmission out, but like that exhaust and stuff, that may not go back together if you don't fix it. You'd want to get that up front. Say, hey, this thing's doesn't look like it's going to go back together well. Now remember, the laws and regulations pertaining to automotive repair and the smog check program change annually. So anything that changes, it's the shop's responsibility. It's not the customer, it's not the consumer, it's the shop's responsibility to know what changes when it changes. Like I added the fact that you can get a text authorization. That's okay. You're supposed to print them, but that's kind of hard to do. Okay. And then let's say after you do the tear down, you need to provide that second or the supplemental estimate. So after inspection, diagnosis, tear down, whatever it is, prepare a written estimate on the price for that specific job, itemizing all parts and labor required for the repair. Contact the customer for authorization. Authorizations obtained the same way when the first authorization occurred. You can do it phone, in person, etc. Now, do you have to follow the itemized work order exactly? Yes. So this is my example for that. Let's say, oh yeah, we're going to rebuild your engine. Then you get in there, you gave them a price for the engine, the parts, the labor you said you're going to need. 4 piston, 4 sets of rings, these bearings, these gaskets, these whatever. Let's say you start doing the work because they approve it. And then you're like, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm just going to do the gaskets. I'm not going to do the full rebuild. You can't do that. You can't just be like, you know what? I'm going to do something different. Whatever the customer agreed to is what you have to do. If you get into it and you're like, I'm not going to do pistons and rings and bearings. I'm just going to do gaskets. Stop, call the customer, get a new estimate going saying, hey, we're not going to do bearings and rings and stuff. We're just going to do gaskets. This is the new price. Then you're good, but you can't just change it. Okay, makes sense. What if the customer decides not to have the repairs performed? Okay. We should reassemble the vehicle within the maximum time period. Okay. So that means when you provide the estimate, if they don't approve it, they need to know how long it's going to be for you to put it back together so they can take it out. If you say within a week, you have to have it done within a week. If you say within a day, you can't take a month. You're in trouble if you're like, oh, I didn't get time to put it back together. I got other things to do, right? So you need to give them the maximum amount of time, not hours, the maximum number of days until it will be done so they can take their car, okay? Now, what if they don't have the repairs and reassembly is not possible? That's possible. Once in a while that happens. If reassembly is not possible, you should note the change in method of repair and adjust the bill accordingly. If you have knowledge that the act of teardown might prevent the restoration of the vehicle or the component to its former condition, you shall write that information. All right, so let's just say they drop it off and you're like, yep, we got to take that transmission out. You got to pull the transmission out. It's all messed up. It's all rusty. A bunch of stuff breaks. You can't put it back together. You should contact the customer and readjust your bill. You should have quoted them to tear it out and put it back together. So if you can't put it back together, it should be cheaper. They should be getting some discounts. Cool. Brian, go ahead.
So for the one where it says if the customer decides not to have their repairs performed, you said to include the maximum amount of time it would take to have it put back together.
Like in days, yeah. Like
Yeah.
when can I have my car back? Exactly.
So when you give them that estimate, should you take into account the amount of cars that you'll have, like on average as well?
Exactly. So
Okay.
and it's so really, let's just say you got the transmission out and you're like, hey, this is going to be $3,000 to fix. And they're like, you know what? I don't think I'm going to fix it. Then right then and there, you'd say, no problem. You have no requirement to fix it. You cannot fix it. That's okay. But I have to tell you, we're really busy. it may take us a week to get this done. It may take us a week to reassemble your vehicle. And at that point, the customer may say no, but the point of the law is to say, you have to tell them, something. You can't be like, okay, if you don't want to fix it, no problem. And they're thinking it's going to be done at 5 and you're thinking you'll work on it next month. You know, you got to come clean right then and there. If you look at it, it doesn't actually say that you have to have it done soon. It just says you have to tell them. And if they don't like the answer, you know, then that's something you guys would be able to work out, you know, the customer and the shop. And the customer may say, well, I need it done today. And they may say, well, look, like this is, you know, we got this much time into it. It's going to take us this much to finish it or whatever. But communication is what they're demanding there, really. Okay, pretty good. And then there's your estimate. And this one's a little bit tough to read, but generally I want to give you an overview because you guys are going to have an assignment to make one of these up. It's a repair order, but the repair order is really this. It's more the invoice. Okay, so if we back up, here's your initial estimate. I'm going to read the words because I know you can't see them. It's got your automotive repair, your name, your license, your address, your phone number, all that type of stuff. Customer information, vehicle info, the odometer, the license plate, the VIN number, information about the engine, an invoice number and date, right? But the odometer is a pretty critical one too, right? And then it's got some contact info. And then it's got the first line is malfunction indicator lamp is on, no drivability concerns noted by the customer. Road test, diagnose, DTCs, diagnose the cause and provide repair recommendation. All right, so this is the initial estimate. Basically, it's saying like the customer, John Doe, with this 2000 Wrangler, dropped it off. They're like, hey, why is my check engine light on? The shop's saying, we don't know. I don't know. We got to diagnose it. And he's like, well, I want to know what's wrong with it. That's all. I don't want you to fix it. I just want to diagnose. Cool, no problem. Here's your estimate for the diagnosis. And the customer will be like, $80. I'm not going to do that. $80. I can get it diagnosed at Vato zone or whatever. Then go to get in the zone, you know, go get in the zone and stuff. But this is legit. This is sample provided by Bureau of Automotive Repair saying, no, we're good with you charging diagnosis because we know it's going to take time. It's going to take the technician time to do that strategy-based diagnosis. By all means, charge for it, but you got to give them an estimate for the diagnosis. And that was $80. And the customer signed, and then we're chilling. Then we go ahead, and what we did was road tested the vehicle, verified mill is on, malfunction indicator lamp. No drivability concerns, retrieved DTC, P0131, low oxygen sensor voltage, observed the freeze frame data and performed test of oxygen sensor circuit per the factory service manual, found upstream O2 sensor faulty, recommended replacement of oxygen sensor, and then to clear DTCs and road test to verify the repair. The customer's gonna be like, how much? And then you'd say, well, you were at 80. We're gonna do another 80 in labor, and the part is $60 plus tax. And they're like, well, how much is that? Well, it's going to be $224.95. And they'd say, yeah, sure. When they say that, yes, you'd write down right here. It says additional cost was $144 over the 80 they agreed to, a total of $224. You're going to do the description. You're going to say you talk with them by phone. See, there's a little check box, and be like, yep, talk to them by phone. Then when you do the work, remember, you got to replace that O2 sensor. Then you got to verify the repair, right? You got to verify. So this one was the first C, the concern, mill. This one was the cause. You did X, Y, and Z tests, and you determined the cause of the concern, which is a mill, was a defective sensor, and it lists all the steps to get to that point. Then the last one is the correction, which is kind of added down here. Recommended road, okay. Replaced upstream oxygen sensor, cleared DTC, road tested vehicle, monitors completed, DTC did not return, repair verified. And then a lot of times they'll say odometer in 103,292, 103,316. Boom, that one looks beautiful. This would be the actual invoice. The invoice is the only one that has the 3 C's: the concern, the cause, the correction. You can't have the correction on there until it's done. And once it's done, it becomes an invoice. That makes sense. So you guys are going to end up making some of these. You can do an initial estimate, a supplemental, which includes the cause, and then an invoice, which includes the correction, right? So I want to see you understand the progression to that point. Now, any questions you got? Now's the time to ask.
Does the supplemental estimate include that section at the bottom of the invoice as well, or is that only the final
This one was
invoice?
a specific sample from the bar. Let me see if I have the estimate form that we have at the school. I believe I do. So there is one on the desktops that you guys can use. So this one's pretty cool. You can just see this is the first estimate. Concern: customer states check engine light came on at idle. Recommended diagnosis: 1 hour at 25 an hour. Armando here is way too cheap. However, this is the right format. It's the concern. I actually didn't do the supplemental estimate and the invoice, but you're gonna basically do it on a page like this. You can make up your address, you can make up what it is, you can make up the VIN, this stuff you can get together. But the main thing is we need to see the concern, the cause, and the correction. Now we're gonna tell you to make up a concern. So it's okay if you don't always know that much, like what Armando did. Check engine light came on. That makes sense. That's fine. The cause is where you might get a little tricky. The cause is going to be like, you got to make up a fake diagnosis. We're not looking to see how technical you are. We're looking to make sure that you understand the cause is your diagnostic steps and what you determined is wrong. And then the correction is, I repaired this thing and I verified the repair by X, Y, and Z, right? Everybody should understand that. It's okay if you're a little lacking in your technical ability. So like I've had people with the AC blows warm, there's a coolant leak. The cause was pressure tested and found coolant leaking out of the radiator. The repair was replace the radiator, repressure tested, no more leaks, right? These types of things should be sequential: C or CCR. Make sense? That's the main goal. Just make sure your documentation's straight. The odometer is good, but usually I'd put in and out right there so we can see what your road test looked like. But at the school, you're not going to road test these lab cars. If you do, you're going to jail, straight to jail. All right. That's a good question. Any more questions?
Are we going to use for the invoice, are we going to use the cars that we already pulled the information off for the Unit 3 lab packet?
No, when we get to doing this type of work, you'll be able to make it up. You can use your car, a made up car, an imaginary car, a lab car, whatever car you want is good. Because again, the focus is the 3 C's, the documentation. Any more? Now's a good time.